Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto merged with Dragon Balls in Dragon Ball. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Venom Spirit and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto just stared out the window of his hospital room as he kept recalling that fight with Sasuke. How had it come to that? Why hadn't he seen the changes that was happening in his best friend sooner? He was a horrible friend. Hell, he had thought of Sasuke as a brother. Wouldn't a brother had seen his sibling was in pain and trouble and helped him? Naruto breathed heavily, his eyes fixed on the horizon. It wasn't that long ago that Kakashi had brought him back unconscious, bleeding from gaping chest wounds that reopened when his and the Kyuubi chakra he could access were depleted. He didn't even remember them, he was down when he felt the Chidori tear through his solar plexus, his last thoughts being scratching Sasuke's forehead protector by accident. No. Not accident, he missed on person. He called have torn out his eyes, he'd been intending to, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. One claw swipe and Sasuke's greatest tool would have been ripped from him. The entire Rieso Orochimaru wanted him would be gone. He should have done it. A tightened fist, the straining of muscles in the right arm was his only visible reaction. Then there was his promise. He promised Sakura to bring Sasuke back. Bringing back another guy for the girl he liked. He wanted her to be happy, but making that promise hurt so much, still hurts. She asked him with tears, and he couldn't find it in his heart to not make his promise. His word was everything to him, it was the one thing he truly had control of in his less that spectacular life. Hell, a shitty life really. And then he compounded that promise with another that the promise of a lifetime seeing her fake smile had somehow hurt more than her tears, and when she cried in honest emotion, it was more relieving than her faked emotions. Those promises were heavy and he was honestly scared of them. Scared of what the result was when he came through with them and what he might be left with, if anything, when he did. Naruto also realized something. In the fight, he had effectively been killed with finality a total of 3 times, maybe more. The first Chidori, the head drop into stone, and the Chidori to the solar plexus. He survived only because of the regenerative healing factor the Kyuubi gave him. He stayed in the fight and got his hits in with tricks and gimmicks, creative uses of the skills he did have. But Sasuke with his Sharingan had kept up and the curse seal allowed him to match the cloak with a tail. He concluded Sasuke had real skill, while his were half-assed and followed up with his tricks. He cursed Mizuki and the other academy instructors for this, maybe even Iruka a little. He knew for the fact that his education had been sabotaged, Mizuki's manipulation of him that night was proof of his ill will, and he got things, so why did he always fail less hard in other areas at school? When he looked back, it should have been obvious. Just another mark to his own personal failings. As much as he wanted to curse them, he felt it was more his fault because he didn't question things earlier. Just accepted. His tightened fist, his nails digging into his palms were drawing blood now. He wasn't strong, not on his own. Teamwork and friends could carry him. Precious people gave him the will to fight. But the actual strength to fight and carry out his will to protect them and stand with his friends, that was what he lacked. What he needed now. I would be stronger. He whispered aloud to himself. Naruto would be leaving with Jiraiya soon, and his friends would be meeting him at the gate to see him off. Opening his hand, he saw the cuts from his nails healing quickly, and grimaced. This was why he had gotten by. So many times before that fight, he should have been dead, but wasn't. He realized now that his healing was making him sloppy, he could just tank hits. But what happens when it's not enough? The fight with Sasuke happened. He was allowed to live. A kunai would have been enough to end it there, yet he didn't. Getting his orange jumpsuit on, he made his way out of his hospital room and made his way home to pack his things. He ignored the glares and the whispers, all of the people wishing for him to die on that mission. Getting home, he packed up what he needed plus a few extra things into his pack, using the storage scroll Jiraiya had given him to hold all of it. Once ready, he left out and headed for the gate. This training trip, he had to hit the ground running and hit it hard. When he arrived at the gates, he was surprised to see most of the Konoha 12, minus a few more there. Getting near, he smiled as they turned to him with similar smiles on most of them. Hey guys. Didn't expect all of you to be here. Well, we wanted to wish you well on your way out. Plus we all decided to give you something we think may help you. Spoke the familiar and welcome voice of Iruka, his older brother figure. On cue, he and everyone else pulled out scrolls, books and other odd and end things. Iruka came forward first, since he spoke. This is from me. A storage scroll containing some of the basics you learned in the academy, so you can properly review and work on your foundations. A strong foundation, a strong house can be built on it after all. Also, I've included a few other things too, like my allocation technique. He said with a smile. He stepped back, knowing he didn't have much time, and others had things to give Naruto. Naruto. A low, aloof voice spoke, though there was a weight within it that was heavy with doubt and sadness. I can't say how much I've failed as your sensei. I should have seen this coming. Kakashi spoke, but held up a hand when Naruto went to speak. I am your sensei, I should have done more about it. This is my failure. I should have taught you and Sakura both more than I did. So here's this. A scroll containing a basic elemental ninjutsu of every element and training methods in the elements. They're useful for chores, add training for learning future elemental ninjutsu. I've also included a notebook detailing your flaws and strengths and what to work on and how. Learn well in these next few years, Naruto. Kakashi spoke, his voice sullen, but he tried to be more cheerful for his student. But he couldn't get the image out of his head of a gaping bloody hole in Naruto's chest out of his head. After that very depressing moment, someone intent on cheer stepped forward. No worries, Naruto. Your fires of youth will burn brilliantly and we shall all see how brightly they burn upon your return. I talked with Guy Sensei, and we came up with this. Some weights, a book on Ijutsu and Guy's personal notes and instruction, learn from this and surely your flames will blaze with everlasting youth. Spoke the bushy-browed genin. And the depressing atmosphere was blasted away just like that without problem, whichever you was thankful for. Naruto took the scroll, still a bit stunned from the full energy of those words directed at him. After Lee, Kiba decided to keep it going. Hey Deadlast, close your mouth or you'll attract flies. Take this. He said, tossing him a scroll. A Taijutsu scroll we Inyazuka used to help in our training. Not really a clan thing, but every Inyazuka swears by that scroll. So you better learn from it. He spoke, bumping fists with Naruto after a moment. Shino stepped forward next. Naruto. We may not know each other well, and I may not have much to give. But we are Konoha ninja and comrades. So I present this. He spoke, giving a book and scroll. The book details many types of incense, which are poisonous and their cures and what may help you. And a stasis scroll, for any bugs you come across but cannot identify, so you may bring them back. Everyone was a bit stunned to hear Shino speak so much, but laughed when they realized his gift also helped him if he came through with just one new bug. Always the efficient one. Lady Hinata, you've something to give, I think, right? Asked a new voice, who Naruto saw was Neji. But slightly back a little was Hinata, who was nodding at Neji, but looking away nervously as she stepped forward. And Naruto. I know you'll be gone for a long time. So I made this for you. She said, handing him a storage scroll as well. More of the healing cream and some notes on things you may find useful. She said, finally. She had gotten better than the stuttering and consistently pausing mess she used to be, but in front of Naruto, she'd likely always be shy. Also, I asked Kurenai-sensei, and she gave me a scroll on breaking Jinjutsu to help you. She finished, handing him the other scroll she had in her hand. Hinata. Thank you. He said, a gentle genuine smile. He didn't know why, but Hinata was always kind to him and it was something he appreciated greatly. Unlike Sakura who hit him, Ino who yelled at him or other girls aside from Am, she was really the only girl that was nice to him. She bowed her head, stepped back, muttering a welcome. Naruto. Spoke the serious voice of Neji. He was still injured from his fight days ago. I know we've had our conflict before, but I still thank you for what you did for me. In return, though it's not enough to pay back that debt, I doubt anything will. I hope this helps. This is a scroll I wrote on the development of many of my techniques, past, present and future, my ideas and conceptions. I know you can make use of this, but I also ask you to destroy it when you finish with it. Benefit from it and I hope to see you grow stronger with it. He stated, giving a confident smirk, saying he'd of course grow strong with training like his. Ha. Here you are in bright orange, smiling you head off at all the things you're getting. Well, don't let it go to you head. Here. Said a female voice this time, catching a scroll. Tenten just smiled at him. That's some stuff from our shop. A compliment of brand new equipment and gear, plus well, the orange has got to go. You're a walking kunai target, no two ways about it. So there's a few sets of clothes in there for you. They're a little big so you can grow into them. Now please, ditch the orange. It's an eyesore. She said, though no real negativity in her voice, it was all teasing, though Naruto could tell she was serious about being a kunai target. If she's the one to get you out of the orange, then we'll be throwing her a party. But you need more than a wardrobe makeover to improve. You get these from me. Spoke his fellow blonde of the group. A botanist book to identify flowers and the uses. Good for cures, poisons, cooking and more. Plus a few books on mental fortitude and meditation. You need to think more so hopefully those will help. And please, style your hair. Ino poked. She couldn't let Tenten be the one to get the last jab in at his looks if they were going that way. A little offended but smiling since they apparently cared, he guessed, he turned to the next. Troublesome. Don't listen to the women, Naruto, they'll only give you a headache. Indignant haze could be heard. My point exactly. But you will benefit from thinking before you leap. So here. Books on strategy tactics, creative thinking and combatives. Plus a storage scroll full of board games and their rule books. I want a game with you when you come back, alright? Shikamaru spoke, getting a big smile and nod from Naruto. Choji was next and he helped out a small bag. I asked my dad for help in getting some things for you and we made this up. A guidebook to proper nutrition and cooking so you can eat better and grow taller and stronger. Ichiraku ramen is nutritious, but variety helps. We also got you some of our pills of different types that can go sparingly on them though, they're stronger than any pill of any kind you've had before, promise. Dad also tossed in a book on controlling your body better with chakra. Something we use in training to learn our signature jutsu. Should help you. Choji spoke, more than happy to give his fellow glutton as much as he could. The Ichiraku father-daughter pair stepped forward then. AM immediately grabbing Naruto into a hug. I'm Suo, gonna miss you, Naruto. You have to come see us soon when you get back. She said, giving Naruto, who was essentially a little brother figure by now, a kiss to the cheek. Now take this. She said, handing him a small bag to him before leaning and whispering in his ear. It's a learn to cook book. But also a notebook on how to treat girls. You could have done better during that lunch with Sakura some time ago, but I've included as much as I can think of in there. Just promise to tear at it and learn as much as you can. Okay. She finished, getting an embarrassed nod from Naruto. Had he really messed up a simple lunch that much? Instantly he was 1,000 times more grateful to AM for that and being discreet. Gucci laughed a bit at his daughter's antics, but turned deadly serious. Naruto. Listen well. He spoke, this getting everyone's attention. The only time they'd ever seen the ramen chef so serious was the one time they'd seen a guy bash Naruto's head in years ago while eating in their stand. The man found Tucci's largest knife to his neck then, before he ran. What I'm about to give you must never be shared with another soul in the elemental nations. Am I clear? He spoke, arms crossed, and now everyone was nervous. Just what did a ramen chef had to give that required such a content and such seriousness? When Naruto nodded, mirroring a similar seriousness, Tucci nodded and pulled a thin booklet from his sleeve and handed it to Naruto. This is the base recipe for Ichiraku ramen. The base upon which every permutation and variation of our ramen builds off of, including our diet ramen. I've included a few of our recipes including your favorites. But this is for your benefit, to cook for yourself, and when you return to show me your own recipes you create. Understand? Tucci spoke, still deadly serious. Naruto nodded furiously, holding the booklet like it was the meaning of life. Everyone was silent a moment, still leaning forward expecting something life-altering. Until the event caught up with their brains and the face planted the ground. All except Choji, however, who was in awe. What? A ramen recipe? That's it. I thought it was gonna be the secret to immortality or something. Hell, even the sagely advice of an older man would have been better. And shouted out. Nonsense. Choji shouted, huffing steam from his nose. A working man's money-making service has just been handed down. You may only see a recipe, but this has the weight of all of the man's working life now placed in Naruto's hands. His secrets and efforts gone into making that recipe, the ramen that is delicious as it is nutritious. Now lays with Naruto. This is a sign of complete trust. Learn to respect what is taking place. In the life of food, this is a moment of rare happening and great importance. Choji spoke passionately. Tucci and Naruto didn't even pay attention to those talking, as Naruto slipped the small booklet into his shirt to be secured, bowing respectfully to Tucci, and bowed his head slightly and returned, as they stepped back. The moment of full formality left everyone utterly slack-jawed. Seriously. What had they just witnessed? There was a loud bark of laughter, a woman's voice, before the current Hokage stepped forward and smiled. Brat. I hope you realize what all of this means. Despite how things happened, you got friends and people that care for you here. Always remember that. And the best way to repay them for their friendship and care is to come back alive, so I want you to take this. She spoke, handing Naruto a storage scroll of her own. It's got comprehensive scrolls on first aid, field aid, battlefield care, and alternative care options. Along with medical supplies that will be useful. You may heal fast, but I'm wanting to hedge my bets on you as much as I can to make sure you come back. And there might be a time when you need to help others, and knowing how to throw a punch can't be your answer to help them sometimes. But a simple bandage, some medicine and kind words can do wonders. Got that? She asked, and a firm nod later earned him a smile and a kiss to the forehead. I'm betting on you, brat. Now get going. She spoke with a smile, sneaking Naruto over to Jiraiya. Lucky brat. She doesn't hand out those kisses lightly, you know. Better treasure that. The Toad Sage spoke, though he had a teasing grin on his face, while Naruto's was a bit red from all of the attention. He waved to all of his friends, his precious people. But as they left and the gates faded out of sight, he sighed. Here, kid. The older man spoke, and Naruto took the offered scroll, confused. That's your training menu for the immediate future to help guide you along the way when I'm not available and give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. We're gonna have to break you down and rebuild you from the ground up. I won't lie to you. If it wasn't the furball in your gut, you should have died. I saw your medical files, you should have died years ago, kid. But it's not all your fault. Nor does it do any good to dwell on it now, because you're alive and we're gonna fix it. Jiraiya spoke, giving Naruto a smile. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be biting at the bit to test your mettle. Finished with a confident smirk. When we get to our camp, we'll review all of the scrolls your friends gave you and compile everything into a neater, comprehensive and easy to understand form, alongside my training menu, so you can benefit best from everything they gave you and what I have to offer, add and refine into you. Understand? Hi, Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto spoke, Jiraiya's attention grabbed. It was usually Iro-senin, but he wasn't going to look a gift horse eye the mouth right now. Good. Now let's hop on it, we gotta cover a fair distance today before we can set up camp. But while we move, we're going to talk and train. Here. He said, handing Naruto a water balloon. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Going through the steps to making a Rasengan counts toward chakra control. If you can perform each step with just one hand and faster than you could before with better results, the better your control and the closer you'll be to forming a Rasengan with one hand. Once you actually master that step completely in your dominant hand, you'll do it again in your off hand before doing it again with both hands at the same time as quick as possible, as many times as possible, then moving on to the next step. Now get to work. He stated, smiling as Naruto grumbled and started. They walked and talked for a while, Jiraiya running Naruto's mind through many possible scenarios and seeing how Naruto would respond before telling him what he'd do right and wrong or how the scenario would change. Naruto had trouble with the Rasengan step again, as he suspected, his clone method had stunted and even regressed his control of the Rasengan. He could dedicate half the work to the clone while he provided the rest, a workaround, but a wasteful one and time-consuming. And it sent his control backwards. By the time they stopped, Naruto managed to pop the water balloon one-handed, but it took a lot of effort, so he still had a ways to go. In the camp, Naruto dumped his pack and unsealed everything, then arranging everything, allowing Jiraiya to read and look everything over. The man nodded while Naruto kept working on his Rasengan training and got to work writing up a new scroll to encompass everything there, including his menu and details, with more to bring together what his friends gave him. Yes, this would do nicely. Jiraiya said all of the Taijutsu scrolls together, ninjutsu scrolls, chakra scrolls, technique scrolls and supplies, and information all together. Naruto, make a group of clones, at least one for every book, scroll and piece of text here. He stated, and Naruto just did it, no complaints as he was too focused on his Rasengan. Alright clones, each of you pick up something and start reading. Keep reading until you either finish, then dispel, or until you run out of chakra. No whining, just do it. He spoke, stopping it before it started. He watched the clones get to work and smiled. Kid didn't even realize the potential of his clones, but he soon would. He sat back as he cooked their dinner, waiting for it to happen. About an hour later there was a pop and the original Naruto shot his head up, as did the others, before looking over to Jiraiya. Did what just happen, I think just happened? Asked a whiskered blonde as he looked back to the scroll lying on the ground where a clone used to be. Jiraiya just nodded. That's right. Kage Bunshin send their memories and experiences back to their original when they dispersed. Kage Bunshin was originally a jutsu meant for scouting. I'm surprised Kakashi never told you about the secret of the technique, though he probably assumed you already knew. He stated, smiling. Now, make another clone to reread that scroll. Every time a clone dispels, make a new one to replace it to pick up or reread. Jiraiya finished before returning to working on the food. Might as well make a few to practice the leaf exercises, tree and water walking too. He finished and Naruto did just that. Watching Naruto training with his clones was something else, but it was necessary. 3 years was actually short to get this genin strong enough to potentially face S-rank threats. So he was going to have to pull out the stops and rebuild his foundations, and he was gonna build them as rebar reinforced. Occasional pop of clones would be the only real sound in their camp and Jiraiya would look the over from time to time. He didn't mention how he had secretly sealed the full Icha Icha series, Blackout Authors Cut Special Edition, signed, into his supply scroll with a note that would guarantee Naruto read them, though for good measure he added a signed personal copy of Tales of a Gutsy Ninja with his parents' note in it, knowing he'd find it eventually. He wouldn't be actively tainting Naruto, but he could do it indirectly-ish, at least. He smiled perversely, oh yes, this was going to be great. Soon all of his clones had dispelled at least twice by now and it was starting to get dark, so Jiraiya called it quits for the day. Finally. Naruto moaned out as he dispersed all of his clones, wavered a bit but shook it off. All the information was staggering but amazing. Creating a few clones to pack everything up, he went over to Jiraiya. "So kid, what do you think of this training method?" he asked. "It's awesome. It's like I learned all of that without even trying, but I know I did. It's weird but awesome," Naruto called out smiling. "Alright, settle down brat. You're probably the only one who can train like this. This method would kill most people. So we're going to take advantage of it. Now you read everything and know most of the material by now. What can you tell me about what you learned?" he asked, serving up their food. "Well, it was like that, what I learned from one book or scroll, I was able to see the similarities to something in another scroll and better understand it when before it would have been harder." He spoke, remembering what he was speaking of. "Right, this method allows you to cross-reference information quickly and make connections, but since you're learning T quickly, it's all fresh and thus meshes better. You'll continue to do this with what you have in your pack, as well as other reading material like VU, memorizing everything. Then when it's time to practice what the scrolls teach, you'll be better prepared to implement it successfully. Your learning with clones is comparable, if not better, than Uchiha learning with the Sharingan. I say better since you are actually learning it rather than just copying it. Understand?" "Yeah, I do. So when do we start actually practicing then though?" he asked. "Not for a week at least. I want us well far away from Konoha and other before we get into serious workouts so we don't draw attention. NWE and get to sleep, tomorrow you put those weights on and we're running tomorrow while talking and you working on your Rasengan," he stated, much to Naruto's groaning, but keeps his words to himself. Their training went on like this for the week and like Jiraiya said, once they got to practicals, they cut loose. Jiraiya was practically beating Naruto into the dirt with full contact sparring, forcing him to adapt and cool downs of Naruto, practicing the taijutsu forms in his scrolls before back to sparring to use what he memorized the week before and practiced in his cool downs. Then doing all of this while weighted on his legs, wrists and waist was insane. But Jiraiya kept him on this training menu. Like he said he was going to have to break him down before he could rebuild him from the ground up. But while the original Naruto trained physically, his clones did chakra control and Rasengan exercises, and others were combining exercises, while some were doing their own R&D on their old techniques and new ones. The clones doing R&D discovered something. Their henge and sexy jutsu, while different to one another, were similar in one point, the same point that made his henge different than what he read a henge was supposed to be in the review material Iruka gave him. They were real. Skin and blood, pain, real. He remembered the time he henged into a Fuma shuriken and Sasuke threw him its abusa. If that had been a regular henge, then that honestly shouldn't have worked. When the clones tested this, they immediately went through a rigorous string of tests and breaking it down like Jiraiya showed them how to when analyzing a jutsu. Eventually they found the common element and hand seal combination that made both his henge and sexy jutsu the same and managed to combine them. Creating a new type of henge that he dubbed the Keihin, a literal transformation. Jiraiya was shell-shocked by the complete version of the jutsu, but noticed something, a large part of the success, like his original henge, was the mental image or knowledge of what he was transforming into. Jiraiya immediately had an idea and snickered to himself. When they got to the next town, Jiraiya bought whatever books on human anatomy and female form he could find, telling him to study so he could properly imitate a woman to the last detail, since women can always seem to see the smallest wrong detail. Embarrassed all to hell, he grumbled as he read, reading by himself, so he could avoid the embarrassment and teasing from his now rechristened Hirosenin, but he didn't care, this jutsu was worth the old name. Once Naruto had the books memorized, he immediately tossed Naruto into the women's baths and told him to Keihin into a girl and research, otherwise he was going to get beaten like he did. Naruto could only panic before he did just that and sank into the water. The his or her now eternal embarrassment, women, a group of beautiful and naked women, came in, pretty much like Jiraiya planned all of this. Which he was sure he did. But the other women saw Naruto and pulled her in to talk with them, and Naruto had to adjust really quick if he didn't want to be discovered. Naruto never saw so much variety of the female anatomy ever and in such detail than he did then. But something he noticed was that he was too distracted to focus on her mental image of Keihin, realizing that once you transform, it stays, no extra focus or even fear of dispelling, just the initial large chakra used to transform and then the lower upkeep to sustain the shape shift. By some stretch of luck, Naruto got out of there without injury and turned back to Naruto one safe. Jiraiya found him soon after and proclaimed it a success, though received a kick in the nuts from Naruto. "And what in the hell was all that about, you could have gotten me killed," Naruto shouted at his sensei. Relax kid. You're alive. But you didn't even notice it, did you? Your Keihin was dead on, no missing details. Jiraiya enlightened his little apprentice. "I couldn't even tell when I was peeping, and that's another kick to the nuts," down the toad sage, while Naruto shivered and felt very dirty and violated. "Don't even go there. Now I'm going to go back to training, I'll see you later. He said, still shaking slightly, not at all liking the fact that, even as a woman while it happened, Jiraiya was purposely peeping at him. It was worse than using the sexy jutsu during the month train. Naruto got back to his training as he said, and eventually Jiraiya came back with a shit-eating grin. What are you so happy about? He asked, almost afraid to ask. Oh, nothing much, just conducting research in the best way possible. He said, giggling perversely. That jutsu of yours can't be detected, you know. It's something else, kid. He said, a hint of pride, awe and even envy. But Naruto did not look pleased. You took my jutsu to use for peeping, he asked threateningly. Well, I was there watching when you redeveloped it, you know. Did you expect me not to pick it up? He asked, before avoiding a Rasengan aimed for his nuts. Hey, watch it. Who's going to train you if you do me an A? He asked. He eyed another but just laughed. Gotta try harder than that, I'm too fast for you and you still make your Rasengan so slowly. But better luck next time. He laughed as Naruto grumbled and got back to work. Eventually Naruto had revisited all of his jutsu and with Jiraiya's help, had refined everything. By this time, his conditioning was on the rise and his taijutsu was coming along nicely. Chakra control was increasing, as was learning how to manipulate chakra from all his tenketsu, using the Hyuga-style chakra control exercises. From cross-referencing the scrolls he got back in Konoha, he learned the Iruka allocation technique, which he was quickly taking to, was a pulse of chakra, similar to one of the Genjutsu breaking methods in the scroll Hinata got from Kurenai for him. A little tweak and it worked perfectly for just that. The weeks started to pass by, and Naruto's progress using the shadow clones was staggering. He had undone years of a sabotaged education, and now he was by far much stronger than he could have hoped to be at this point, and idly considered where a could have been before, as he knew the secret to shadow clones in the first place. Eventually he was starting to really master the content of his current training menu, Jiraiya had modified with all the stuff he gotten from his friends. Jiraiya was considering the next phase of the training while they walked to his side. Naruto was practicing with a full Rasengan in either hand, training to reduce his time and creating a Rasengan with either hand at the same time. His Rasengan were now larger than normal and more powerful, nearly getting to the point Jiraiya would say he mastered the Rasengan to the point the fourth did. Almost. Naruto was already developing those 5 basic elemental ninjutsu and their training methods. If he kept going like this, Naruto may be the one to complete the Rasengan past what the Yandere could. Eventually they stopped for the day to set up camp. Naruto started into the forest first. It had been nearly 2 months already and the training was having an effect as he grew and filled out better. He was wearing the clothes Tenten got him, a pair of black clothes with burn range trim, though simpler in aesthetic than his old jumpsuit as simple trousers and shirt. And like Ino said, style his hair, so he let it grow and tried to tame it with little success. This merely resulted with a neck-long spiky blonde hair that flowed back away from his face and eyes and along his scalp, his headband helping to keep it back. Hey Iro Senin. There's a crater here and something in it. Naruto called out from what they had thought was a clearing they could camp in deeper in the forest after walking off the road. Jiraiya was curious of what Naruto could mean, so he stepped a bit faster and arrived, and indeed it was a large crater, but it was overtaken by nature. But it didn't look like a crater from a jutsu. Here, hold this. He tossed his pack to Naruto, who grumbled and pulled it on to keep T out of his way. Jiraiya explored the perimeter of the crater, while Naruto went down to the center, where the overgrowth was covering something jutting up from the center. He took a kunai and started cutting off vines, sheets of moss and weeds. Jiraiya meanwhile, found something a bit disturbing. He used a stick to pick apart the overgrowth to reveal what was hidden to find a skeleton, but it was his sadness to see it was small, a babe's skeleton. However, his interest was grabbed when he looked to see what he could see as a like of bones extending from the pelvic area, which he could only determine to be a tail. What in the world, he muttered to himself. Naruto had gotten a large portion of the vines and overgrowth cleared away, revealing an off-white sphere, perfectly spherical, though there was a circular window set within. Wiping his hand over it, it cleared away the dirt, dust and grime from the window, letting light bleed in. Suddenly the sphere started making a whirring noise and it broke apart, a door pushing outward and open, revealing a pristine inside. A chair inside a ball. What is this? He questioned more to himself than anything. Moving inside to get a better look, he sat in the chair. Hey, this is really comfortable. Even better than my leather chair. He mused to himself. If there was one piece of furniture he liked above all else, it was a good relaxing chair. Gigi had given him one of the leather chairs from his office and he practically slept in it enough from when he was a kid to make it his. The whirring by now was starting to get louder and then Naruto figured it was time to get out. But as he was getting up, his hand pressed against some of the controls, the pod's door closed quickly. Hey. Let me out. Naruto shouted, banging against the door. Jiraiya heard the whirring and turned to see the door of the pod snapping back closed and Naruto starting to shout. Running down to the center, he looked at the pod, but nothing he could see would help. "Kid, calm down. Look around inside for anything that can help." Jiraiya commanded, appearing calm, but it was a farce as he was panicking himself, but letting it control him wouldn't help. Naruto did as commanded and sat in the chair, looking around. He found some buttons on the armrest of the chest and then on the inside of the door too. Looking over the controls, he couldn't read the language, but tried his best to press only a few buttons, seemed to be what he wanted. However, the whirring got louder and then the pod started to rise from the dirt. "It's not working." Naruto shouted. "Hold on." Jiraiya shouted as his eyes suddenly turned toad-like, warts on his face. It was half-assed, but one good solid hit was all he wanted. Rearing back his fist, he roared as he bashed his knuckles into the sphere, where it smashed into the ground, a firm indent of knuckles into its steel, but no dice. The sphere just floated again. Naruto was officially scared now and in his panic started pressing whatever buttons he could, hopefully for exit button. Activity confirmed. A feminine voice spoke out. Looking around, where? Following pre-established orders. Returning to home base. "Welcome back, Oker." The voice spoke. "Warning, fuel reserves are low, plotting course to nearest planet with sufficient resources to refuel." The pod started to recede higher and higher. "Jiraiya. Help." Naruto shouted again, but now the pod was too high for Naruto to see the man. Jiraiya pulled out a tag and used chakra to mark it with a seal before jumping up and slapping it onto the sphere, activating it. A tracking and locator seal. That was all he could do at this point without risking Naruto's life with something like an explosive note. The pod suddenly took off into the sky and Jiraiya's face was set in stone as he gripped his fists. Naruto was still panicking, banging his fist against the dew, but suddenly blue skies shifted to black and then he saw stars. His eyes widened as he saw the moon getting bigger and bigger and then going off to his side. But a glimpse of green light across the moon's surface caught his attention, however it was out of view before he could get a read on it. Now away from the planet's gravitational pull. Initiating hibernation. Estimated travel time of 91 galactic standard days. Rest well, Oker. The voice spoke and Naruto could tell a gas was flooding the page. He tried to fight it, but it quickly made him drowsy and sit back in the chair. His and Jiraiya's packs on the floor between his legs as his head fell back to the headrest and he was out. "Damn it, I'm sorry, Naruto." He spoke, looking down. But he did at least get a tracking seal on it, so there was some hope. Wherever he went he might be able to get the toads to reverse summon him. So he calmed and just tried to do what he can. He looked around the area and found nothing else of use. So he carefully sealed the remains of the babe in a scroll, obvious it came from the pod, where else? But as he was thinking of his next action, he suddenly came to realization. Naruto has his pack and he was 2 months away from Konoha. And the memory of Naruto's send-off showed how many people may very well get in line to kill him when news of what happened gets out. "Oh shit, I'm dead." He spoke aloud, going pale and feeling a heavy weight sinking down into his gut. Not at all happy with the situation, he swallowed his terror and started making his way back to Konoha. Truthfully, he was fully afraid of what may happen to him. Naruto may as well be a surrogate little brother or even the closest thing to a mother-son relationship that the two could possibly have considering their individual damage. That wasn't to mention Kakashi either, the son of his sensei. He had a feeling he would know how Naruto felt to have a Chidori shoved through his chest. He shivered at the thought. Haruka wasn't sure what he would do, but he had a sudden cold chill that spoke of nothing good. Tucci honestly scared him, as did his daughter Am. The two might as well be family to Naruto and saw the man work a knife and he doubted Am's knife skills were any less than her father, difference was though she had righteous feminine fury on her side. Then there was all his friends. Yay, he was going to have to be sure not to stick around unless he really wanted to die excruciatingly painfully. Disclaimer. Don't own DB, DBZ, DBGT, or DBS, nor Naruto. If I did, then baby would have had a damn pacifier the entire time he was on screen. Naruto was slipping into unconsciousness as the gas that filled the pod entered his system, setting his body to regenerative sleep and allowed his mind to drift until he was out. However, instead of just conking out, the gas was meant as a stasis-type sleep, which had a peculiar effect on the mind and resulted in Naruto being sent to his combined mindscape-sealscape. Waking up from the sleep in the underground area where water coated the floor, he looked around confusingly. Where? Oh, he spoke, dawning realization of where he was now upon him. I'm inside my mindscape, but I didn't intend to come here and if he fox pulled me, I'd be in front of his cage, so how? He asked aloud as he started walking. Following the familiar path to the Kyuubi's cage. He and the fox may be on obvious bad terms, but he might be able to get answers from the fox. So he kept walking until he stood within the chamber of the fox's cage. Oi, fox. you awake?" He asked out to the one other presence within the chamber. Claws suddenly smashed against the cage bars, growling could be heard as the claws were pulled back. "So my jailer figures to visit me. How pleasant." The deep gravelly voice of the fox spoke out, its words reverberating throughout the chamber and practically through Naruto. He shook away his fear, even caged the presence of the fox set him on edge. "Not really. I'd be more than content to let you keep sleeping, but I need answers." He spoke, getting the fox's attention, however slight it might be. "I assume you are aware of what happened a little while ago." A nod from the orange-red furred fox behind the sealed gates. "Then I assume you have an idea of how I got here without wanting to come here, or you're dragging me, right?" He asked, and the fox grumbled. "I do, but why should I bother to even explain to you?" asked the nine-tailed fox of its warden. "Because it'll make this conversation that much quicker and you can go back to sleeping." Naruto answered simply, and the fox considered this a moment. "Fair enough, dealing with you for any amount of time is headache enough. Better to get it out of the way." The strongest of the Biju spoke. "The gas that you breathed in is some kind of stasis-induced sleeping gas. It essentially sets the body into a trance that slows down all your physical body functions to a crawl, where even a year in this pod would have little negative effect, if any, on your body, for a normal person. With me, however, that's a moot point." The fox stated, which brought up a new point for Naruto. "There's that too. I've been poisoned and gassed before, yet you've healed me of it, so why has this affected me so strongly now?" he asked, and the fox just huffed. "Because you stupid human, I allowed it to." The fox stated, and at Naruto's confused expression, it sighed. "If I had prevented the gas from affecting, you would have stayed awake in the pod and by one means or another, whichever came first, died. Well, this is what I want, it's the where that's the problem. I'd be released into the vacuum of space, unable to move about, get back to our planet, or anything. Imagine that for a moment." He told his jailer, and after a moment's time, the visible shiver and cringe was the fox's answer. "Good. Now you see my point of why I allowed it. This way, you survive, and wherever we land, I can work on killing you then." The fox spoke, resting its head on its claws. At least the fox was being honest with Naruto at least. "But if that's the case, why am I here and not completely asleep?" he asked, and the fox breathed heavily. "The gas puts the body into stasis, but the mind not so much. Normally the mind would sleep when the body goes into stasis, but when it started the process, your mind sank into our combined mind and seal escape here. Which I hope you learn to enjoy the pleasures of being stuck in here." The fox spoke mirthfully with a disturbing grin. What do you mean?" Naruto asked, not sure he liked that tone or the grin the fox was giving him. "Well, you remember what the machine said before it took off. Estimated travel time to the nearest planet it intends to take us is 91 days. But you are in here. Your mind, here time flows differently, especially with your body in stasis, your mind is free to work." The fox chuckled, reveling in the irony now of Naruto being stuck. Naruto thought for a moment, pulling up the information he remembered reading about the mind, and decided to recite what he remembered to jog his memory. The mind is a powerful organ of the body, capable of running everything the body does in real time without delay, despite the complexity of working the human body. In fact, the mind is capable of running so much more, as using sight for example. The human mind processes 60 to 80 frames a second, as what we normally see. But the mind can process up to 300 frames per second if prompted to. Meaning the mind can, he trailed off, gulping as realization hit him. The mind can process everything up to 5 times faster already perceived. He spoke a little shakily. The fox just grinned at Naruto. 91 days, little human. Stuck in your mind, where you don't need to sleep, eat, or even defecate as you humans seem so pleased to do. 91 days becomes 455 days. 455 days left to nothing but your own mind. I hope you enjoy it, human, as much as I have." The fox chortled out loudly, laughing at Naruto's lost expression. "Now, leave me, go explore and see what you find. It'll amuse me to see you stumble and fall." It stated, and Naruto was pushed from the chamber back out into the hall. He stayed there just staring at the ground for a moment as he processed what he just learned. 455 days, not sleeping, totally awake and left to the mercy of his own mind. "I am in deep shit," he muttered after a while. Taking a breath, he tried to calm himself down. "It's okay, it's fine. It's only my mind, this is me we're talking about here. Let's just explore and see what we come up with. I'll have to pass the time anyway." So with that, he started walking down the hall and noticed the hall was changing from dank to dry. A bit of improvement. But then he started to notice doors. Narrowing his eyes, his eyebrows knitted together in confusion, he grabbed the first door and opened it. "Why do they hate me?" Naruto heard a small, broken and crying voice call out from the open door, and Naruto was assaulted with a memory of his youth after one of the harshest beatings he had ever suffered from the villagers. He looked on sullenly at the memory and his past self as it replayed out for him before his very eyes and stirred it within himself to remember freshly. Seeing it from two perspectives like this just made the memory that much more intense. "Not a pretty sight, is it?" spoke a familiar voice, though it was a full octave lower, the tone harsher. Looking to the side, Naruto saw himself, but his skin was darker as if tinted in shadows, along WTH the rest of his appearance. The whites of his eyes, the sclera were gray, and the irises red. "Who are you?" he asked the shadow mirror of himself. "You." It answered simply, before laughing bitterly. "Or at least the you don't acknowledge, the true you, and yet not." It stated. "For now, just call me Yami." It stated, smirking as he stepped forward beside Naruto and stared at the memory. "Ah yes. Our harshest beating ever. I remember it fondly. How many broken bones did we have?" Yami asked of Naruto, who shrugged. "Oh that's right, the hospital would treat us so you didn't know. Well the fox told me. About 20 light fractures, 37 full breaks, and a few shattered bones. You passed out in the alley in a cardboard box, you don't remember, but the fox healed everything. Though because of how tight the seal was back then it couldn't heal you as quickly as it does now, so it took 3 days to do it. You just slept through it unaware. But I remember," he said, waving his hand and displayed Yami's recollection of the event, and Naruto buckled, holding his body as he re-experienced the pain of it all. "Oh yes, did it ever hurt? Well, now you can understand it better now, can't you?" he stated, a sadistic smirk. "Why are you doing this?" Naruto asked, and Yami just frowned. "Why, to help you of course. I've got you for 455 days. I want to remind you of everything we've been through, not just what you remember, but what we both experienced. Although I can't lie, this'll be fun for me, since I despise that happy-go-lucky idiot you are. But you've gotten interesting at least, after Sasu kicked your ass, you managed to get your head out for your ass. Hence why I'm helping you now." Yami just stated, though never gave a full answer as to why. "Now get up. There's 13 years of shit you have to see." Yami finished with a smug grin and cheerful tone that was sarcastic. Whatever rejection Naruto had died when he felt his body being pulled to the next door, realizing he didn't have much of a choice. Naruto couldn't track the time, not in the slightest, both from his perspective and Yami's, and from internal memory, and viewing it as a spectator. Each one hit him hard, most were bad, and the old feeling of loneliness and cursing the world returned, and Yami practically cheered, but when Naruto latched onto those good memories, Yami would frown and cross his arms. But as they progressed through all the memories, all their pain, Naruto was aware that his life was pretty much shit. Just enforced from the many perspectives he had to experience it from. "Our life really was hell," Naruto stated, and Yami nodded. "It was. Much of the villagers deserved to have their throats slit by us. Personally. Publicly." He voiced and waited for a denial from Naruto, one that never came. Yami just smirked. "But there were good times I guess. The Ichirakus have always been kind to us," spoke Naruto, remembering the booklet and cookbook he got from Tucci. "Maybe, but they certainly didn't do you any favors outside of cooking," spoke Yami flatly. "Did they? They're not ninja nor can they use their chakra. They're just civilians and we had enemies. Enemies who wouldn't mind bashing their skulls in if they did anything more past cooking or outside of their stand for us. For what help they gave us, would you wish that on them? If not for them, we probably would have died from starvation several times over," he said, reminding Yami of that memory. Yeah, whatever," Yami voiced as they walked down the hall. "So since I guess you're not dragging me around anymore, that's all of the memories there are? Our entire life?" Naruto asked, and Yami just looked to him. "You sure? You know how memory works by now. What's the one memory you haven't seen yet, the one that'll answer your greatest question?" Yami asked, and Naruto stopped in his tracks. "The day of our birth." "Bingo. Follow me. Or are you just gonna stand there like Hinata?" he asked. "I am coming," he spoke, catching up to Yami. "Still can't believe I never noticed she liked me like that," he spoke, face-palming as all the memories of the girl came together. "Yep, you're a slow, spastic, dense, oblivious idiot. Congratulations," he spoke, clapping his hands for Naruto who just stared at him deadpan. "Whatever, anyway, where's this memory at?" Naruto asked as they continued walking down the halls. "Patience. We'll get there. It is the first memory after all," he stated, taking his time getting there. Naruto grumbled but didn't say anything more. They walked for some time, arriving at another door, one that was cordoned off. Naruto knitted his brows together and looked to Yami. The Sandaime sealed the memory. He deemed it too caustic in case the Kyuubi ever tried to use it against us. But he had no way of knowing I would come to be, or the seal wouldn't mean anything to me. Yami spoke, waving his hands and all the chains, locks, tags and such faded from sight. "Go ahead. But when you start, burn the memory into your mind, as it will explain a lot." Yami spoke, staying back as Naruto walked down the short hall to the door, opening it. First a bright flash of light and then wailing, a baby's wailing. His first sight was of people he didn't know, an older woman with brown long hair and a few wrinkles. He remembered her from a picture on Gigi's desk. The wacko. He smiled at that, so she'd been there to help bring him into the world. Then he was carried and his wailing continued, but as he was carried, he saw something that stunned him. The fourth Hokage. Slack-jawed, he almost missed him reaching out for him, but the wacko telling him the mother comes first. He was set by a woman on a stone idler, her face and hair wet with sweat, and she greeted him, calling him Naruto. Her red hair and violet eyes staring right into his blues. Mother Naruto spoke out, tears forming in his eyes. Then there were the exchanged words between the yondaime and his mother, and he was assaulted with a new fact. Father, he spoke, the formed tears rolling down his cheeks now. I'm the son of the fourth Hokage. He spoke, his voice hollow. He cast a glance back to Yami, who nodded but pointed back to the door. Naruto returned his attention to the memory, and what happened next shook him. The new man was holding him. He had a one-eyed mask on, with black markings on it, holding a hand over him. Threatening him, telling his father to step away from the Jinchuriki. He was confused, wasn't he the Jinchuriki? But a small glimpse at his mother said otherwise, as he saw a seal on her abdomen. Mom was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki before us. He said, his voice still hollow, but now so fragile in its tone. A kunai came out and now, he was being subjected to of being thrown, and his father catching him. But then he heard the hissing of explosive tags being activated. Then a flash of yellow, and all he could see what night and his father's face, as he spoke to himself. The man's target was his mother, the Jinchuriki. Then he was brought to what he assumed was a safe house of some kind, before being left. He looked back to Jam, who shook his head. There's more. Yami stated. Naruto nodded and turned, now seeing his mother there, holding him. His mother was talking to him, and he burned her words into his memory. He could almost feel her holding him, but the moment was ripped from him, as he and his mother were brought from the safe house, out into the open night air. Naruto saw candles around him. An altar, and he knew what this was. A ceiling that put the Kyuubi into him. But as he watched, he was breaking on the inside, as he saw his parents take Kyuubi's claw for him, but the Shinigami sealing his father was using was already working. His mother spoke her last words to him, and then he learned of his father's seal, what it was meant, what he had done to the Kyuubi, and what he had hidden away within his seal. Fragments of their soul latched onto their chakra. Eyes wide, he watched the sealing finish and saw the lifeless corpses of his parents. The tears flowed freely now, as Yami stepped forward and closed the door, the memory done. Yami didn't say anything, just letting Naruto cry and soak in the memory. His voice cracked, but he tried to calm himself. Do we know who the man was? Naruto asked Yami, who shook his head. No other memory shows any mention or side of him. This is the only memory we have of the man who ripped our family away from us. But now you understand. You know everything about our life that I do. I want you to think on everything, meditate, or whatever it is you do, then I'll find you when you're done. Now go to that empty chamber I showed you. Yami spoke, walking off to let Naruto have his time alone. Naruto started walking, but he felt hollow, and his steps were automatic. In the chamber, Naruto allowed himself to fall, as his mind ran through that first memory, and every memory that follows, absolutely everything. He could see the action and reaction of everything that happened in his life now, and knowing the complete truth, it left him feeling empty. He curled into a ball and just let his mind continue, piecing everything together. Like the rest of the time in his mind, he had no sense of time for how long had passed, but when he sat up and looked to the corridor, he saw Yami standing there, looking to him, but glancing to his own body, as if waiting for something. Well? Asked the shadow mirror of himself. Can we train in here? Naruto asked, who blinked owlishly before smiling. Aye, that we can, but we'll mostly be reviewing everything and coming up with new ideas. And just refining our fighting form, but you know that, since it's about the same as image training. Granted it's the most extreme version of image training, but still. Yami spoke, walking toward Naruto who stood and stretched. Doesn't matter. That man fucked up our life, and when we return to Element, I'm going to find him. He stated. What are you going to do when you find him? I'm all good for violence, don't get me wrong, but he is powerful, and I would much prefer we live than die young. Yami spoke, looking to his other half. I'm not sure. But that's why we'll train, every little advantage I can get I will take, for when it comes time to meet him, I will be ready to face him if I have to. He stated and saw Yami was smiling at him. Well, I can already tell you that you have a ways to go before you're ready, but like you said, that's what training is for, and every little advantage you can get, we'll take. It's good thing for you I have an eidetic memory and remember every detail of every single thing we've ever experienced. So even if we can't train our body, you'll be better prepared for it when you can. Yami stated, taking a stance. Naruto nodded and followed up, and for an unmeasurable amount of time, Naruto and Yami trained to the absolute limit they could. The limitations of the mind were non-existent. But they could only train to the level Naruto, Yami and his memories allowed. However, that wasn't all that he did now. Between training sessions, he walked back to Kyuubi's chamber and stood before his cage. "So you return and not the same, I see," spoke the elder being from behind his bars. "I have Yami showed me our life. Everything," he stated simply and watched as Kyuubi opened and eyed him. "So you are only the yang half your power and form," he stated, and the Kyuubi just huffed. "Your damn father to blame for that one. You tried to kill me. How would you like being sealed within host to host for a full 100 years against your will? I didn't want to be sealed again. Your Shadame only saw us for power, and Mito and Kushina both kept me under lock and chain. Your seal by far has been the most lax in its restraint of me," he stated, motioning how he was able to move around. "I guess I can see that," he stated. "You're not angry that I killed your parents?" he asked, uncaring but curious why he wasn't yelling. "Not really. I'm pissed, but I understand your reasoning. However, if not for you, I'd be dead, but also because of you, I'm hated. I can't decide where my feelings on you reside," he spoke, looking to the giant fox. "Such indifference, I've never felt such equality," he spoke sarcastically. "Oh, shut it," he spoke, leaning against the wall. "Do you know who that man was that ripped you from my mother?" he asked, this catching the Kyuubi's attention. "No, but he had a similar feeling to another who controlled me. Why?" he giant fox asked. "Because I intend to face the man one day," he stated, and the fox just cocked an eyebrow. He considered his words a moment before he spoke again. Obviously he was Uchiha by how well he could use the Sharingan. But he had a similar feeling to others I've fought. One being Uchiha Madara and the Shadame Hokage, Hashirama Senju. But only Madara knew how to use the Sharingan to control me. And considering he felt similar to him, possibly a descendant of his. However, the part of him that felt like the Senju didn't feel natural," he stated, informing Naruto of all he knew of that man. "I see. But why so forthcoming?" Naruto asked. "Because while I despise being sealed into you pitiful humans, I despise being controlled against my will more. Especially by the damn Uchiha. Why else do you think I ever even gave you a tailed cloak to fight that Uchiha brought in that valley? Surely wasn't to help you. I was hoping you'd kill him," he stated, snarling at Naruto for his failure in that part. "Whatever. But we do have a common goal. That man has to pay, and I need to be strong enough to do it. I don't want to rely on your power, but I know damn well I may not be strong enough when we do meet," so he spoke, looking to the fox who snorted. "If you fight him, I'll give you my power. Just so long as you circa kill him, that is. But don't think I'm agreeing to allow you free reign of my power, it's conditional," he stated, looking directly at Naruto. "That's all I ask. I want to be strong on my own, relying on your power all the time made me sloppy and pitiful. The fight in the valley was proof enough of that," he stated, pushing off the wall and walking down the corridor. "I'll come talk to you again. Right now, I need to get back to training with Yami," he stated as he left the Kyuubi's chamber. The fox just looked at Naruto's fading figure before he was gone and just rolled the conversation over again and again in his mind. "Indeed, boy, you were pitiful. But if you're serious about this, then I will see to it you at least have the best chance you can," he stated, more than willing to invest into this to ensure he and any other Uchiha who could control him are killed. So started loosing his chakra through the pipe of the chamber, filtering down through the seal and into Naruto's body. The chakra started nourishing Naruto's body, enhancing his regeneration, allowing his body to heal its stunted growth and filling itself out more, folding chakra through his muscles, tissues, his very cells, to enrich his body, to strengthen it. "This gift does not come lightly, boy. So you best not disappoint me. Even if you are the only one who can receive it," he stated, laying his head back down to sleep. Naruto was unaware of the changes happening to his body, but whilst that was happening, he was back in the chamber with Yami, one again running through their taijutsu drills. By this time they had fully compiled and absorbed all the taijutsu knowledge they had to a more than adequate style that fit Naruto's needs. "Good. That's enough," Yami called out and Naruto stepped out of stance. "Taijutsu is down about as far as we're going to get it, and no matter how much more you spar and fight against your memory enemies like Haku and Zabuza, there's not much else you can improve on taijutsu without more resources or working on your body. So we'll work on the other stuff next," he stated, spectral forms of the two missing nin standing there waiting. "Still can't believe Haku is a guy," he said, sighing. "I don't he or she was actually. Remember, Haku was extremely beautiful. Portraying herself off as a weird boy might have been her first offense to make sure she wasn't R8. Yami shrugged. "Good point and very likely, but I suppose we'll never know for sure. Still doesn't solve the confusion though," he said, shuddering since he couldn't put that thought down at all. No kidding. I've been wrestling with that one since we first met Haku. But stepping away from potential homosexuality. He stated, trying to change the subject as the spectral mist nin faded, he considered what to do next. We've been reviewing everything you have, relearning all the things we've ever gone over and learned, relearning and refining. You should be quite a bit strong when you wake up. Though you'll have to test it all and train when you wake up to see by how much. He spoke, taking a seat. Wait, what about those chains Mom used, can't we use those? He asked, taking a seat himself. Technically, but I haven't found how to yet. Something is missing I think. And not like we can ask Mom, since we don't know how to access the seal to see her dad. He stated, sighing. Besides, you need to learn how to use your body first. Remember, we're not like Gaara or even other Jinchuriki if we're assuming their biju is placed in them sometime after birth or when they're older. Kyuubi's chakra was influencing us before we were even conceived, making us stronger right from birth. Compound that with the fact that our Uzumaki lineage somehow makes us special and ideal containers for the Kyuubi, and that Mom seemed to have a special chakra, same as Dad, and that Dad made the seal to leak the Kyuubi's chakra into us since it was sealed into us. Our chakra and body has a lot of potential. Potential we just seem to have trouble accessing. Understand? Yami explained and Naruto nodded. Man, this is a pain in the ass. He muttered and Yami nodded. But looking to his hands, Yami sighed and looked back to Naruto. Still, I have to thank you. If not for you, I still might be that stupid happy-go-lucky idiot. He stated and Yami waved it off. Think nothing of it. You'll always be you. Hell, we're essentially the same person and even I don't know what you're thinking. But if you're wanting to then me, you will when you learn how to be yourself. He stated and Naruto knitted his eyebrows together in confusion. Don't worry about it. But in the future, be honest with yourself. Alright. He asked, getting a nod from Naruto. Good. Now, it's been a while, so go talk to the damn fox. Yami finished, shooing Naruto away. Naruto stood and left the chamber, but Yami looked down to his hand again and sighed. Still hasn't accepted me huh? He spoke to himself out of earshot of Naruto. Naruto stood before the Kyuubi now, really looking at him. If you had freedom, away from people. What would you do with it? He asked the fox. The fox looked down at Naruto. Does it matter? Unless of course you intend to free me. He stated, looking down at the human. Just answer the damn question. Naruto snarked at th fox. What I was doing before, I'd stay away. You humans have always come to me to involve me in your troubles, ever since I was born, it's always been you humans pulling me in. Me and the other biju. Why? What does it matter to you? He asked, curious why his container would ask such a question. No particular reason. But it was Madara who pulled you in, and then Hashirama who used you like a commodity. Right? He asked. And the fox nodded. If I did release you, not now or even a few years, but one day before my death. Would you live your life away and not go after those I want to keep safe? If we can agree to that, I can seek to release you before my own death. He stated, looking dead-eyed at the fox. The fox was honestly stunned by Naruto's proposition. However his jaded mind took over and looked for deception, but found none. You would really release me, just like that, even knowing full well it would mean your death, it'd be suicide. He stated, probing for any hesitance or lies in his jailer's words. I'm well aware, but by the time I do that, I'm hoping I could have a family, kids and all that. But yes, though it may not be for a long time coming, I would free you. But only if you agreed to my proposition first, on your word. He stated, standing his ground on his point. The fox stared at Naruto, looking to him, but found nothing flinching, stepping back or any hesitance. Still disbelieving of his jailer, but he would see where this would take him. I would. He finished, and Naruto nodded. Alright then. He stated and started walking out. No bid for my power? He asked, confused, no Jinchuriki ever not wanted his power for their own goals. Don't want it. We already have our agreement for that fight. You give me power when my life is in danger, and I appreciate that, since how I die could either release you or drag you into death with me. But I want to give you the chance no one else ever has before. You didn't ask to be made a weapon or to be controlled. Same as I never had the choice to be Jinchuriki or not. To be hated or not. I want to be better than those who didn't give us a choice and extend it to you. If you let me. He stated with a smile, though kept walking away, leaving a shell-shocked Kyuubi, who couldn't help but see an old shadow over Naruto. But he quickly shook it away. He may be different from the rest, but that doesn't mean he is like him. He muttered to himself, laying his head back down. Still no sense of time, Naruto and Yami had passed the time playing the board games in the chamber they trained in, using the memorized rules and memories of the games that Shikamaru had given him. You know, some would be concerned that you can hold a conversation and even lay games with yourself. Yami spoke with a smirk and Naruto just snorted. Yeah. But if that were the case, I'd know your next move and you'd know mine. He stated. No, you're just that much of a spaz is all. He commented, getting an indignant yell from Naruto, and he laughed. Kidding, you're just that unpredictable, and since I'm you, so am I. He stated, making his next move as he moved his gold king of the shogi board out of danger. Still, how long we been at this? He spoke, not really asking, since he knew the answer already. Can't say. But he stopped as he felt something and smiled. Long enough to wake up. He said, getting up. Naruto felt it as well, didn't know what he meant until he said that. You mean it's been that long already? He said, and Yami nodded. Seems like it. You're waking up now. Remember everything that's happened in here. The future is yours now. So be sure to not screw it up. Now out with ya. He said, sending Naruto off as he started to fade. Once Naruto vanished, Yami sighed, walking to Kyuubi's chamber. He's come a far way since he first came here. He stated, looking to the fox. Indeed the kid has. He stated, getting a cocked eyebrow from Yami. Did? He asked. Let's just say he made a better impression than my previous containers. He stated, closing his eyes. Then it seems I've some new memories to review, then thanks for making that invest into Naruto by the way. He stated, smirking as Kyuubi just huffed. He made his way out, looking to review everything that's gone on since Naruto came here. Outside in the pod, Naruto yawned and stretched, only to hit his hands on the roof. Ow! He shouted, holding his hands. But suddenly he saw a planet from the window and could see it. A landmass of green, sand and other colors. The magnificent blue of the ocean around it. Whoa, he muttered as he looked at the planet. It was beautiful, and better no one from Element, as he and Yami agreed to call their planet, had ever seen a view like this. He was enamored with the view that he almost missed the mechanical feminine voice of the pod, alerting him to things. Good morning, Oker. Prepare for atmospheric entry. The voice commanded, and Naruto took a second to recognize what that meant. Oh shit. He leaned back into his seat, however the pod suddenly rotated and he was facing back to the starry black of space. He was confused until he remembered his rehashed studies of academics. This was to cushion his fall with the aid of the chair. He guessed anyway. So he just calmed down and waited. He could feel the pod shake, and for a moment he was almost scared it would shake apart. But to his benefit it stayed intact. He closed his eyes and tensed. Then there was a large impact and Naruto was thrown into his seat, but not nearly as hard as he expected. Actually, it felt kind of okay. He opened his eyes and looked out the window, but all he could see was dust. Leaning forward, he waited and the pod door opened. We've successfully landed. Beginning cool down and diagnostic. Please search for adequate hub of technological development to seek refueling to continue with journey back to base. The voice spoke and Naruto grabbed both his and Jiraiya's packs and stepped out. The crater was familiar and he could see why now. The crater on Element was how the pod arrived the first time, but for no shortage of why the pod was there in the first place. Mysteries aside, Naruto climbed out of the pod and looked around. He was in a clearing of a forest, in what appeared to be a mountain range, he was guessing. Setting the packs down, he took stock of everything first, denoting all of his supplies and what even Jiraiya had in his pack. Before resealing everything for easier convenience to carry. Then he looked to himself and dropped the pack, stunned. You're welcome, kid. A deep voice called out in his head. Kyuubi? Naruto called out, but to no answer. He sighed and looked down at himself again. He wasn't expecting this. Where before the pants and sleeves of his clothes used to be baggy and hang around his hands and feet, they were actually pulled back behind his wrists and ankles now, and the sleeves and legs felt a little tighter. His shoulders too, and his shirt just barely touched his pants waist, where before it bunched around the waist a little. Then there was the fact that he could see his hair resting on his shoulders now. His hands seemed larger and he felt a little off balance, but if he had to estimate, he was now about 54, where before he left Konoha, he was about 48. His sandals felt a little tight, as did his pants, in fact his shirt did too. Thanks. He said quietly. Well, time to do this then. He said, gathering chakra, a lot of it, while biting his thumb. Performing the hand seals and careful to mold his chakra, he kept molding more and more. He needed to summon, but he'd rather overshoot it and summon something big rather than undershoot and get a tadpole in wasted effort. Once he had enough built up, he thought anyway, condensed and compressed for better success, he slammed his hand to the ground. Summoning. He shouted, releasing all the built-up chakra into the jutsu. There was a cloud of smoke, about as tall as he was, but hopefully he got something that could help him. Coughing could be heard from the smoke. What in the world? Naruto, a little put off by the voice, waited for the smoke to clear, and when it did, he found a small toad with white hair, wearing a cloak. Oh. Well, if it isn't Naruto boy. Finally remembered to summon a toad now, eh? He spoke, looking around a moment. Actually sir, I just landed. I've been in that pod for 91 days so far. I guess Hiro-Sennin said to keep an eye out for me when I could summon again. Right you are boy, right you are. But 91 days in travel. That's impossible, you would have needed food and water, not to mention the bathroom. The toad stated, clearly disbelieving. No, some kind of gas knocked me out, put me into some kind of stasis trance. He explained and the toad considered that. Well, doesn't matter, point is you're here now, but still, it's surprising you were able to summon me. We would have expected you to summon something else, and then they would summon me or Ma to come get you. We didn't know you were strong enough to actually summon us directly. He stated, clearly amazed. Well, that's because I've been training. He stated simply. Training how, you've been stuck in a ball. He spoke, again, disbelieving. Naruto sighed and shook his head. Training inside my head, my mindscape. You know how the brain can process things faster than you're actually aware of, right? He asked and the toad nodded. Well, that's what happened. I essentially just spent 455 sleepless days in my mindscape reviewing every memory I've ever had, reviewing all my skills, refining, training and developing my skills. And the Kyuubi I've been talking to it and it gave me something apparently. I guess it's enhanced my body to make me stronger. He guessed and the toad looked grim. And making deals with the Nine Tails. You need to watch out for that my boy. He went on and about to say more, but Naruto cut him off. It's fine, there's nothing to worry about there. Besides, the more pressing issue is getting home now. I've no idea which planet this is, but it has to be a long ways away and I had to exert a massive amount of chakra to summon you, I mean this literally by my standards, not everyone else's. And this pod, I don't know how to work it, but it seems to be out of power, so I can't really rely on it. So what can we do? Naruto asked of the toad. Well, for starters, my name. I'm Fukasaku, Toad Elder. Bunta Boy and Gamakichi speak highly of you. He said with a smile, when Naruto returned. I'd hope so, considering I'm the son of their former summoner. Tell Jiradoro I said hi. He said with a cheeky grin as the toad paled as if he were to be tossed in salt water. I meant it when I said I'd been reviewing all of my memories, that means from the day of my birth, up to current. I know who my parents are. He spoke, dropping that bomb onto the toad. I don't mind so much after I've had time to think of it. I know there were reasons for not telling, but some closure would have been nice, anything. Instead I get nothing. He spoke a little bitterly before he calmed himself down. But that's not the point, I need to get home. I can mess with everyone over this when I get back. He said with a foxy grin that was a bit unsettling to the older toad. Alright. Anyway, let's see here. Get your stuff, I'll reverse summon us to Mount Myaboku Naruto boy. He spoke, forming the hand seals as Naruto put a hand to the toad's shoulder. However, when he finished the seals and put his hands to the ground, nothing happened. That's odd once more. He spoke, and this time more chakra, but the same result. Okay, no messing around this time. He stated before standing still. Naruto had no idea what was going on, but the toad suddenly opened all of his eyes and he felt a massive amount of chakra being molded, however, the jutsu failed again. Not working is it? A shake of the head from the smaller toad. What was that last one about, you just stood there for a minute? He asked. Ah, that was Sage Mode Naruto boy. Come along in your training, control and as a toad summoner and we'll take you in for Sage training one day, like Jiraiya and your father before you. However, that's a moot point if we can't even get you back, and I'm almost out of chakra for now, it looks like you're stuck here. Naruto looked down, breathing heavily. He'd been afraid of this, he and Yami talked about this being a possibility, but he just kind of pushed it to the back of his mind. I'm guessing the distance is too great for your chakra reserves to properly pull me back with you, isn't it? He asked. Seems so my boy. I am sorry. He stated, but Naruto waved it off. Nothing to do about it, the pod's machine said something about this planet being technologically advanced enough to refuel at. Maybe there are people here who can get that pod to send me back. If it got me here it can send me back, right? He asked, looking for any option he could. It is possible, though technology you humans use escapes me. For now, we'll have to settle for you trying to stay safe on this world and if nothing else, keep training and increasing your chakra reserves until we can get you back or you can help supply the chakra for it. For now, write a letter and I'll deliver for you to Jiraiya boy and your Hokage. Alright? He asked, caving his breath now. Gotcha. He spoke, pulling his pack off and finding a notebook and started. The letter pretty much detailed everything that happened from the moment they discovered the crater to then and in detail. Though he left out Yami for the safety of his mental faculties. Then he had an idea and wrote a second letter to Tsunade and then a third for the others like his friends. Once he finished penning the letters, he folded them and signed them before handing them over to Fukasaku. Mind doing me a favor and having Tsunade read Hersa ND my friend's letter first before giving Jiraiya his. And if you can, mess with Jiraiya's head a bit about me knowing my lineage and all that before you give him his letter. I'll summon you again to give you an update on everything going on when I get the chance to and something actually happens. Deal? He asked. Deal? He spoke with a smile of his own now. He didn't get to honestly mess with Jiraiya too much and he could tell there was something worth watching during the reading of the letters. But he looked to Naruto and sighed. You know, you're different that Jiraiya described you as. He said you'd be loud, brash and impulsive. He spoke and Naruto had a tick mark on his head. But I've just had 455 days to essentially review my life and relearn a lot of THNGS or things that should have been taught to me in the first place but weren't. Can't exactly not change after that. He shrugged a bit. Right, you are my boy. Now try to take care of yourself, won't you? I expect a summon soon and I'll likely have a scroll or something for you then. Alright. He asked and Naruto nodded. The toad bowed his head slightly. Again Naruto boy, I am sorry I wasn't able to do much for you here but we'll keep trying to help you as best we can. Stay safe and keep us informed. He spoke before he dispersed in a cloud of dust. Naruto sighed as he sat down and looked up to the sky. Well. Now what do I do? He asked, looking up. He didn't have to wait long for an answer as he heard grass crunching and looked over to see a man with black spiky hair and wearing a blue and orange martial artist's guy standing there in the clearing looking at him. Disclaimer. Don't own it, nope. DB and all them with Naruto belong to another. So sad, but we can dream. 3 months or so back, Jiraiya had managed to make good time to the Leaf without delay and didn't even bother with the gate guards. Instead he just rushed it for the Hokage Tower. Jumping from ground to top when he was at the tower, he could see Tsunade's shoulders sag when he landed. He didn't stand on their usual ceremony of him annoying her, instead, he just opened the window himself and stood on his feet. Stay sitting Tsunade. He spoke, his voice conveying the seriousness of what he was bringing to her. She blinked at him owlishly before looking around and then back to him with narrowed eyes. The older woman stared at him, her brown eyes boring holes into him from beneath blonde bangs, the action framing the green diamond on her forehead. The busty woman leaned forward on her desk, hands steepled as she looked at the toad sage. Where is Naruto? She stated ominously and Jiraiya was fairly certain she sensed that was the problem. Not here taken. He spoke and she widened her eyes. Jiraiya sighed, he knew phrasing it that way bought him enough time to explain and so he recounted the events of their finding the strange crater and the investigation they had. It was a short recollection but he spoke every detail he possibly could. And when he mentioned of him punching the sphere, she looked to his hand and confirmed the damage, healing it for him as he explained. Sage mode may make the user pretty much impervious to normal damage, but he half-assed it for the strength he needed right then. Once he finished with explaining that he placed a tracking tag when he realized he wasn't going to be jetting Naruto out of it and how the pod shot off into the sky, he was sitting in one of the leather chairs with a hand to his face, the other holding a cup of sake Tsunade gave him, which he drank down readily. Have you tried summoning a toad to reverse summon him? Tsunade asked, clearly not happy and even distraught over Naruto's absence now. Naruto may be her distant cousin, but it was still family and despite how they may annoy each other, they treated each other more like family than likely the other knew or acknowledged. Multiple times. But they can't track him. They say he's moving too fast, place the space of the sphere is too small to summon into. My tracking seal can only determine so much, but I know he is still moving. Lord Fukasaku has placed an order with all toads that once Naruto summons a toad, he's to be summoned by said toad immediately. Naruto should have the presence of mind to know to so summon a toad when he can. Naruto's name is also still up in the records board of Mount Myaboku, if he was dead, then the name would have changed to show it. He stated, setting the blonde woman's worry at ease a bit. Shouldn't have let him near that thing. Who knows where he's going to be taken to. He muttered, only to receive a smack upside the back of his head. Enough of that you old pervert. You can't help Naruto thinking like that, there was no way of knowing what you were dealing with. So just be thankful we have what we do. For now, give me the scroll of the skeleton you found. You said it was likely the former occupant of that sphere. We can run tests on it to see what we can find out about its origin or genetic markers. Anything. She spoke, catching the scroll as it was tossed to her. She wanted to be angry with Jiraiya, but she knew it wasn't his fault and he was there and unable to prevent it, Eve risked turning to stone for the chance to free him. Calling in Shizune, she handed the scroll to her and ordered a full analysis and workup of the skeleton, full detail and full preservation. When she left, she turned back to Jiraiya. I know you said you had set aside the first several months to train Naruto to fix the flaws and sabotage in his education and training. How far did you get on that before this happened? She asked and listened as Jiraiya retold of their progress. Fu left out the bit of the hot springs, but did mention the kid's Keihin and the fact it's real and can't be dispelled unless desired by the user. Demonstrating it with a bird form, which flew over to Tsunade, perching on her shoulder. Incredible, it blows my advance henge out of the water. She muttered. The bird nodded before it jumped off, gliding over to the chair and dispelled back to Jiraiya. Yes it does. These are the hand signs, same process as the henge. However, you don't need to keep up the mental image of the henge. Once the shapeshift is complete, it's self-sustaining until you dispel it or run out of chakra. The kicker is the initial chakra cost to perform the shapeshift, but once it's active, the upkeep is about the same as a henge. And to think, Keihin is a result of his own special henge and that sexy jutsu of his. Haven't tested it to see if a dojutsu can spot it, but I'm willing to wager it can't. However, it is the brat's creation, so I'd ask you don't show it to anyone else, leave that his decision. He spoke. Then why teach it to me? She asked, confused but grateful, having already replaced her own special henge with the Keihin now. Because I think the kid would have given it to you regardless, seeing as he knows you use henge anyway. Hell, he might have developed this for you for all I know. He said, and she smiled at the thought. Sighing, she leaned back into her chair, looking out the window. Aside from what I told you his training thus far, not much else. Managed to work in everything his friends and all gave him to work on. Thanks to eating better, he's been growing like a weed and putting on serious mass with the training, so by the time he gets back you may be surprised when you see him again. And those two girls, Tenten and Ino, I think, he took their words to heart, changed his clothes and started letting his hair grow. He stated, and she laughed. Remind to thank those two, maybe a bonus on their next mission then. She said mirthfully. You better, you have no idea the looks some girls keep sending him now that he has changed it up whenever we're in a town. Kid's a natural lady killer and doesn't even realize it. He said, sighing as he shook his head. Such wasted potential. He mused, though rolled his head to the side to avoid the paperweight thrown at his head. That specific potential better haven't remained wasted. If I learn different I will see that any said potential in that area is cut off. Understand? She spoke, bashing her fist into the table. Which Jiraiya nodded his head at. He was thinking of the icha he sealed in his supplies but shrugged it off. It could only do him good. He'd just have to warn him not to say anything when they GT him back home. After those antics were settled, they were both sitting and thinking of what to do next. Jiraiya, I want you to stay in the village unless there is an emergency. I want you and the toads on call when I need you for any updates on Naruto. We clear? She asked, her tone just asking for him to question her. Crystal. He responded automatically. She relaxed and thus he did too. So, the first thing you do when you discover that his Keihin's real and its flaw is to get him a book on anatomy and make him use shadow clones to memorize it and perfect it. Should have guessed you'd sneak something in there. Wait. She said, thinking of something. You had his cage buncheons reading books? She asked and he nodded, though confused. A few moments of silence before she bashed her face into the table. Idiot. She shouted before making a few shadow clones herself, who got to work on her stacks of paperwork. Jiraiya just laughed and she scowled at him. Don't feel bad, Sensei did the exact same thing when Naruto mentioned shadow clones doing his paperwork for him before. It's just funnier that you and Sensei had the same exact reaction. Where do you think the dent in the old desk you had came from? He asked, pointing to the dent in the new desk she had, who sweat dropped at the evidence. This job really does suck the life from you. She said, before taking another drink of sake. They finished their drink and parted, where Tsunade looked up to the sky, as if looking for Naruto. Stay safe out there, brat. I expect to see you back here safe and sound. She spoke mostly to herself. 3 months later, Tsunade was sitting behind her desk handling the few important documents her clone saddled to her as too important for her to relegate to a clone. Finishing her reading, she gave her decision on the matter the document proposed before setting it off to the finished pile. Shadow clones had pretty much saved her from the slow death that is paperwork. Sighing, she made herself a pot of coffee that she spiked with a powdered soldier pill, drinking down the beverage for a little extra kick. Pulling a report from a file she kept in her desk, it was the full workup and analysis of the skeleton Jiraiya retrieved. The results were disturbing. From initial findings they had determined the skeleton was infantile, obviously, but the bones despite their age and weathering, showed an advanced state of hardness and resilience, something that should not be possible. When harvesting what DNA they could, they discovered that on a genetic level, members of the species the infant belonged to were unnaturally powerful, with a strong capacity to grow stronger, both through the regular build-up of power associated with training and through growth, almost like a predator growing into its peak and sustaining that peak for an extended period of time. Other than that, not much else could be determined without destroying what few DNA samples they had left, but those genes that were responsible for such traits was also responsible for the tail. Other than that, there wasn't many difference between it and them. In fact, tests showed compatibility between the species even on a genetic level. It concerned her that a race of people would send an infant here the way they did, and if they were so strong, why send an infant? Were they in dire circumstances? If so, what could threaten a people like them so? If not, then simply why? She was giving herself a headache again over this, so she closed the file and set it back into her desk. When word had gotten to the council of Naruto's absence, they had gone off the rails, but she ordered full secrecy. But when she divulged the findings, Danzo wanted a hand on the DNA sample immediately, likely to try and use it to birth a soldier. The idea had occurred to her to do it with willing volunteer, but she had scrapped it. For now the samples were kept under lock and key. She wanted Naruto back before she even did any thought of such things. Speaking over, it's been 3 months and no word of progress. All things indicated he was still alive and still moving. She worried herself to wit's end over him, but there was nothing she could do for him from where she was, only hope he was okay. Though how he survived in that small sphere for 3 months while constantly moving was beyond her. But if that infant had been in the sphere, then it may be likely the sphere may have some kind of life support system, which she was hoping for. She was sitting back at her desk when she felt a presence at her door, but the door opened to reveal Jiraiya rushing in, a toad on his shoulder. "Tsunade. It's Naruto," he stated, and she was immediately on her feet. However, before she could speak, the toad spoke first. "Easy there, Tsunade girl. He's fine, healthy and alright. Better actually when I saw him," he stated, but she narrowed her eyes. "Saw him? What do you mean saw him? Why didn't you reverse summon him?" she asked, her teeth grinding as she restrained herself from getting violent. Her Naruto was not here and for the past 3 months she could only keep imagining him in danger. Her nerves were not fit to be played with. That was the problem. Naruto had to mold a massive amount of chakra to summon and ended up summoning me, but it used up a large portion of his newly enhanced reserves to do it. When I tried to reverse summon him, I found I couldn't, not even with Sage mode. The distance is too great for my chakra capacity to be up to the task. So he's stuck on another planet. However, that pod thing took him to a planet with people and technology that may be able to get home. So he's doing what he can to get home on his end. However, before we go any further, I asked him to write letters for me to deliver. He asked for you to read both of these," he stated, jumping from Jiraiya's shoulder onto the desk and handing the letters to Tsunade. She didn't stand on ceremony as she opened the letters, hers was several pages long, and began to read. The more she read, the more she relaxed, as her nerves were set at ease as he described the pod, what it did and how he survived, then to landing. However, she became tense again when he described his experience in the mindscape and how long he spent in there due to his mental processing power. She knew all too well the effect he was describing, but he seemed alright. However, when Naruto dropped the bomb on her about him reviewing all of his memories, including the day of his birth, she paled and looked to the toad who nodded. However, he immediately reassured her, and she relaxed. The letter continued to describe his mental training and even the talks with the Kyuubi and coming to something of a strained understanding with it, which shocked her, and the apparent gift it gave him in return. She was almost done with her letter, describing what his plans were and that he'd be writing more and asking for supplies to be taken to him the next time he summoned Lord Fukasaku. She could do that no problem. However, her ire was breached and earned when Naruto described the real method Jiraiya had used to get Naruto to complete the Kain. She couldn't blame the boy, he'd been tossed into the girl's side of the hot springs and likely did the only thing his mind could process at the time. At least he told her and asked for forgiveness, which she gave since it was a certain Toge Sage's fault. Though she was touched when he described the Kain's hand seals and how to use it and its effects for her to use. She'd have to remember to thank him for it later, even if she learned it already, he had still meant to teach it to her. Deciding to read the other letter before chaos ensued, it was a generic letter describing how he's been and not to worry, he's doing fine, in case they didn't know he was gone, and a second one in case they did know, essentially allowing her to choose which to release to his friends. Jiraiya had gotten himself spotted, so they already knew Naruto was gone, so she'd be using that one. Returning her attention to the Toad Sage, however, she rose up with a sweet smile, went over to him with arms open to make him drop his guard, before reaching and grabbing his testicles. "So you dropped him into a girl's onsen, huh? Him I forgive since he admitted to it and asked for forgiveness and because you were the one to choose him in. And the experience might have done him some honest good as a growing healthy boy. You on the other hand." She squeezed and the white-haired man sung a soprano note for a half-second before it was silenced. "Are not so forgiven for doing it in the first place and lying to me about it. Now, what punishment do you believe is appropriate?" She asked with another crushing twist, her hand not letting him drop to his knees like he so desperately wanted to. He tried to say something, but all he could do was squeak. Ah yes, you're right. I should remove them to ensure your specific breed of pervert is not passed down. Now just hang on, it'll only take a second. She spoke before he cowered with a paperweight and cowered behind his toadmaster, watching as she crushed the paperweight she now held in her hand. Jiraiya paled before passing out from shock, pain and relief from her grip. Lord Fukasaku just chuckled and shook his head. He knows what will happen for his antics, yet he still proceeds to do them for some odd reason. Jiraiya boy really is a strange one. He muttered, sighing as he looked at Tsunade. Well, Naruto had asked me to toy with Jiraiya in his stead on account of his lineage, but perhaps you can do that for me, since he is passed out and I have a few things to prepare for Naruto boy myself. I'll return as soon as I'm able. Here is Jiraiya boy's letter. Naruto boy asked it be given to him only after he's been riled up and messed with enough. And I ask you not crush his testicles. Well, I do not care for his pervertedness. I would like at least one of my students one day having a family, and until Naruto boy exceeds Jiraiya boy here as a sage, it's him for the time being. He spoke and Tsunade agreed with a sigh, but smiled as she took the letter and watched as the toad dispelled. Looking back to Jiraiya and the letter, she smiled before hiding it within her cleavage. Oh, she was going to have fun with this. Calling in Shizune, she waited. Yes, Hokage-sama. The woman asked, but looked over to Jiraiya, though Tsunade just waved it off when Shizune pointed to him. Yes, we've had contact from Naruto. However, he's stuck and unable to be reserve summoned. I want you to prepare a storage scroll with standard supplies for long-term survival in hostile territory and a few extra things. She stated, handing Shizune a note she wrote of the items mentioned. Also, see that this letter from Naruto is delivered and circulated among his friends, starting first with the Ichirakus, and ask if they would like to write a letter in return so it can be delivered to him via summon. The woman nodded and left to acquire the order, make her delivery and soon to return. Back on Earth, Naruto and Goku, as the man was named, were getting into a basic conversation. So that's what the planet is called then. He mused and Goku nodded. What about yours? The man asked. Not sure, I just called it Element. Not to be rude though Goku, but you wouldn't happen to know anyone who might be able to refuel or get this spaceship working where it could send me home, would you? He asked, hoping to get something out of him. I think I do, but she's never really worked on a spaceship far I know. I could take you in it to her if you wanted. He spoke, making the offer. Awesome. Hang on just a second. He said, pulling a scroll from his back and dropping down into the crater. Setting the seal facing the sphere, he applied a bit of chakra to it. Seal. He uttered, using the word for the mental focus, before the pod was sealed into the scroll. He rolled it up and tucked it into his pack. Whoa. That was like capsules. The man shouted. Naruto looked at him confused a moment. Capsules? He asked. Yeah, little pill-shaped things with a button on it. Press the button and it'll become whatever is stored in the capsule, press the button on it and it goes back to being a capsule. Though I've never seen a scroll used before. He explained. Well, because this isn't capsules. This is Fuinjutsu, the sealing arts. I'm still rubbish according to my sensei, but so long as the seals are already drawn, only need a little bit of chakra to seal and unseal things to and from scrolls. He went on. Chakra, what's that? Can you eat it? He asked, scratching his head with one finger, head tilted slightly. Ugh no, Chakra is your internal energy, expressed outward for jutsu, or techniques we use on my planet. He spoke and the man got excited, almost hopping practically. Wait, you mean Kai, your people can do that too. You're a fighter, right? You got the physique of a fighter, plus the look and feel. But not sure of your skill though. He went on, and Naruto was having trouble keeping up with the man. Easy. No, when I mean chakra, I meant chakra, not sure if it's the same thing as Kai or what, but it's the combination of one's needle and physical energy, molded together to create chakra and then projected into jutsu, like breathing fire, sticking to trees with only your feet, walking on water, or even this. He said, forming a Rasengan in his hand. The man oohed at the sphere and then formed a glowing sphere FSWN in his hand, about the same size, but Naruto noticed it was just a ball of energy, it had no internal rotations. So it seems to be something similar at least. Yeah. Ours is your vital energy of your bodily essence, developed into a higher form known as Kai, that we project outward for techniques like this. He stated and dismissed his sphere, while Naruto did the same. Maybe after we get you the help you need, we can have a sparring match. That spike of power I sensed earlier seems strong, and I've been hoping for a challenge. It's been really peaceful here, and there haven't been many challenges in the last few years, feels like I'm starting to get rusty. He spoke and Naruto smiled, liking this guy already. If this guy was anywhere near strong, then perhaps he could have a training partner while he was here. Sure, I don't mind. So where is this friend of yours at and how do we reach her? He asked, though went slack-jawed with eyes as wide as dinner plates when Goku started to levitate off the ground. Well, we fly of course unless you can't fly. He asked, seeing Naruto's expression, who only nodded numbly. Well, are you pure of heart? This time Naruto was about to nod when he remembered who his sensei was inside, shaking his head. Then I'll just have to carry you then. Gu exclaimed, picking Naruto up by his armpits and suddenly took off. Heading off into the sky, and at first it was terrifying, but then he smiled as he enjoyed the wind in his hair. However, he was reminded of something he could do. Well, it's not flying like you, but I can do this. He spoke, forming several hand seals, transforming into a large golden bird. He cried out and looked over to Goku, who marveled at him for a moment before he flapped and picked up some speed, Goku flying a little ahead of him. I didn't know you knew the transformation arts too. Oolong and Pure will be happy to meet another shapeshifter. Goku called out and Naruto cried out, though obviously intelligible. The two kept flying for a few hours before a city came into view. There it is. Just follow me, alright. Another cry and they were off. Flying over top and through the city was a new experience. Naruto was amazed at what all he was seeing, everything was so tall and odd, yet unique. He wondered how they built things this tall, but he made sure to keep following Goku, and they saw a large dome building, where he followed Goku down to the yard behind it. Goku touched down first in front of 3 people, who seemed to greet him with a smile, until Naruto landed, flapping his wings to hover into the landing. The 2 women covered their mouths while the man just dropped the cigarette from his mouth. Naruto enjoyed the expressions they had and decided a very small little prank was in order. Hey guys, this is Naruto, he came here from another planet but apparently his ship is busted and needs some help. Think you might be able to help him out? He promised to spar with me once you helped him out. He asked, though they just stared at him, he was getting nervous. Then Naruto strode forward on his talons, leaning forward towards the blue-haired girl, who stood nervously, but when he didn't do anything, she reached a hand out and stroked the top of his head, eliciting a small pleasant noise which she took as good and kept doing it. Goku, my boy. I'm not sure what to tell you, but that's not an alien, that's an eagle. A beautiful specimen of marvelous golden plumage the likes of which I've never seen, but an eagle nonetheless. Though how in the world did you get it to follow you here? The man asked. Oh, he's just adorable and so friendly. Maybe we can keep him. Said the blonde whose hair was done up in a bulb of curls. No mom, as lovable and beautiful he or she may be, we can't keep him, he's a wild animal, besides, he's too beautiful to be kept locked up. The blue-haired girl who was stroking his head said. What? No. H is an alien alright. He just knows the transformation arts like Pure and Oolong, he didn't know how to fly like I do so he transformed into the bird to fly with me. He said, and Naruto could sense the hesitance from the blue-haired girl, who was looking at him guardedly now, and Naruto huffed before he dispelled the Kahin in a puff of smoke. And I was enjoy that too. That's an entirely different feel with feathers than hair. He muttered, pouting as he crossed his arms. The blue-haired girl shrieked slightly, but calmed and then looked to Naruto with an agitated expression and quirking eyebrow. What? I didn't mean anything bad about it, besides I was being honest. That did feel good, I just didn't know how much. Not like you get a beautiful girl to do that for you every day either. He said, remember the advice in the notebook AM gave him. Flattery always helps your chances. The girl calmed and then huffed looking to the side. Whatever. So who are you again? She asked, though there was a blush on her face that her short blue hair just wasn't long enough to cover. Uzumaki Naruto from the planet Element. As on a trip when my sensei and I came across a crater with a space pod in it. I didn't know what it was until it turned on and I got stuck in it and it brought me here. I was hoping someone could help me use it to get back home or something. He said, looking to them. Oh. Right, well, let's see what we can do, shall we? Where's the space pod and we'll go pick it up. He said. Oh, it's right here. He spoke, pulling out a scroll, unrolling it and channeling chakra to the seal it was stored in. Release. And with a puff of smoke, the pod appeared from the scroll. Capsule technology? The older blue-haired man asked. No, Fuinjutsu. The sealing arts. Essentially there's a space inside the scroll through the sealing formula in the way of the pattern draw onto the scroll that allows me to seal and unseal object to and from it. No technology involved, as far as I know. It just uses my people's internal energy, chakra, to do it. Oh, I see. So you one of those types, but found a way to use that energy of yours for more than just fighting. Well done. He proclaimed, but then looked to the pod. Well, it seems to be in good condition, except for this fist print in it. Yeah, that may have come from my sensei when he was trying to get me out before it took off, but to no luck. Ah, shame that, but good for us, since we have a working space vehicle to examine now. Don't worry, we'll see what we can do to get you home in time. For now, Bulma, would you be a dear and show Naruto to guest bedroom? I imagine he doesn't have anywhere to stay since he just arrived and we may be able to learn things from him and vice versa for however long he can stay. Sure. Come along Blondie, it's this way. She called out and Naruto followed. But hey, what about our sparring match? Goku asked dejectedly. Oh hush you, all you ever think about is fighting, case in point, you haven't visited once since that last big fight, you're literally just a few hours flight from me, like you were today. She said, angry. Don't worry Goku, we'll have it sometime soon, but I would like to get some rest and food, besides, isn't there anyone wondering where you went to? He asked and Goku suddenly panicked. Kai. Sorry, gotta go. He pushed before flying off. Naruto just blinked, as did Bulma. Does he do that often? Naruto asked and Bulma sighed. Not really, guess Chichi made quite the impression on him in their married life. She said with a snicker. Sounds nice. He spoke, a little sullen, thinking how something like that probably isn't possible for him. Bulma turned to him a little concerned at that tone, but not her business. Well, here we are. So tell me about this planet of yours and your level of technology and whatnot. She asked or rather demanded as she rocked onto her heels to lean against the wall, hands behind her head while he unpacked his pack and scrolls, thinking it'd take a while for them to get the ship working. Well let's see, I call the planet Element and it's and from there he just talked about his home planet, explain all he could really, about the nations, ninja and chakra, their techniques, how the villages lived, the wars and all, everything he could that wasn't personal to him really, or at least anything recently personal, he wasn't too bothered about telling people he had a shit life. But he didn't feel the need to voice it right now. Though the now named Bulma seemed dejected that Naruto didn't know too much about technology, but what he did know, like the giant heaters of the land of snow or the chakra armor that creates barriers, seemed to interest her and when he showed her the Rasengan. She was pulled in by how she could literally see the energy moving inside of the sphere. When he was sitting on the bed in the room and Bulma in a chair by the desk inside the room as well. Wow, your world seems so diverse from ours. Yet some things are just the same. Can't believe you're a child soldier and that you're only 13. I'm twice your age. She spoke, somber, though disbelieving at the lat part when she looked him up and down and muttering a last part to herself in a low whisper. Hey. I am 13. Though, does your planet have wars too? He asked and she just nodded. There used to be. But they were rare, but we had a big threat from an army called the Red Ribbon Army, they're gone now though so no worries. She spoke, waving it off. Well, would you like to come down to the lab with me? I'm sure Dad probably has the thing taken apart and gotten T coordinates for your home planet from its computer now. She spoke, getting P and Naruto followed her, his room now set up for his use now. He hadn't even noticed how long they were in the room talking. Following her down to the lab, he was amazed by everything he saw and honestly, felt really out of his element here. Ah, Bulma, Naruto, I trust you're all settled in now, then? Asked the older man. Yes, I am. Thank you Dr. Briefs. He spoke, trying to be on his best manners for his host. No problem my boy. We'll have you on your way soon enough. He spoke and directed them to a table where he could see the ship's shell and all the guts, including the chair, torn out. Now as you can see I've gotten the ship down to its basics parts and should be able to replicate everything in time for a new ship that you can better control. Though I may take some extra time to ensure everything works and see where it can be improved. For now I want to understand as much of this as I can before I build anything. I've already extracted the coordinates from the computer, including where you came from and where all this specific pod has been to and was going to. In time I should have it perfect for you to get home. In the meantime just settle in and find a way to pass the time. Alright. He asked and Naruto just nodded numbly, surprised he could do all of that. Well I'm not sure of you Naruto, but you need some new clothes to fit in and those ones look to not be fitting you anymore. So I'm going to take you out shopping. We'll be back later Dad. She shouted out, all but dragging Naruto out of the lab and away, much to her father's amusement, before he got back to work. Naruto on the other hand, was no so amused and didn't really get his bearings again until he found himself in a clothing store and having clothes thrust into his arms and ushered into a dressing room. Now try those on and see how they fit, then let me see. She called out and Naruto grumbled, but sighed. As he got changed, but sealed his pouch and thigh holster away for now. He chose to let his necklace hang out now and came out to let Bulma see him. He was wearing a pair of fitted jeans, fixed with a belt, his leaf headband tied over that for aesthetic, a fitted V-neck black t-shirt, black and orange trimmed strapped boots, and red and black vest. His blonde spiky hair still flowed back, just long enough to pool slightly around his shoulders, letting his deep blue eyes to be clearly seen as well as his whisker marks, which had grown more defined. His new height and filled-out musculature cut a more impressive figure, especially with the new clothes which were drawing some attention to him. Bulma nodded appreciatively of her clothing choice. Not bad at all. Definitely better than before. We'll get several more of these outfits and a few others in other colors. Bulma. Not to rain on your parade, but I could also use something for training and fighting. I would rather not get any nice clothes messed up if I can. He spoke and she nodded. Thank you for actually being that considerate. Unlike the rest of the people I'm friends with, they wouldn't think twice to fight in formal wear. She grumbled but got everything together and paid for before they left for another shop. Some martial arts place down the road where Naruto found a selection more to his liking, though not anything truly shinobi-like. But he found a basic eye similar to Goku's in look, though it was blue with black trim. He got several and had them modified to fit his needs a bit better before leaving back out with Bulma. Thanks for that, Bulma. It's have been embarrassing to walk around in clothes that don't even fit me. He said sheepishly. Don't worry about it. We got more money than we know what to do with. So this is nothing. Now, let's find a place to eat, I'm starving. She spoke and Naruto agreed, his stomach growling to show it agreed too, which he looked away as he blushed. However, Bulma stopped as her name was called. Hey. Bulma. A new male voice called out and Bulma cursed, then suddenly looped her arm into Naruto's. Follow my lead, for right now we're on a date. Just act casual. She said and he nodded, guessing this guy might be trouble for her and he wasn't about to let the person who helped him so much be troubled if he could help it. Oh hello Yamcha. What a surprise to see you so soon. She spoke very aloof-like. Well hey. Sorry about last time, got kind of caught up in what I was doing. Sorry I haven't seen you in a while though, sorry, who is this? The now identified long black-haired Yamcha asked, looking at Naruto analytically. Hey, I may look alright, but don't start checking me out. Naruto said, deciding to have a little fun with this where he could. Bulma snickered and Yamcha sputtered but huffed a bit as he regained his composure. His name is Naruto, he's new in town and staying at Capsule Corporation with us. He asked me out on a date and I accepted. She said, emphasizing that he asked and she accepted. And Naruto could see Yamcha flinch. Oh, so that's what's up. Well, he could still have his fun. Well, I thought what better way to get to know the area than to have a nice date in it and discover what you can find with someone you can enjoy it with. Doesn't hurt either if your company is beautiful and worth keeping. Now Yamcha looked as though he'd been stabbed and was trying to recover. Oh yes, we've got to get to the restaurant, they won't hold the reservations all night. Well, it was good seeing you Yamcha. Hope you have a good game tonight. She called as she directed Naruto to walk away. Once they were away, she cackled maniacally. That was perfect. You're a natural. She called out, laughing. Well, I was known as the prankster king back home. No one was safe from me. No one. Not even our village leader, the most powerful of us. I managed to prank an entire ninja village and never got caught. He said, noticing his arm was still looped with hers, but he wasn't going to say anything, he was actually rather liking this close contact. So what was all that about? He asked. Wow, that's impressive and not sure if I should be scared. Or not. Nah, you're on my good list and a friend, I wouldn't prank you unless you actually truly and well deserve it. He said. Oh, that's good. Well anyway, Yamcha is kin to my on-again, off-again boyfriend. We've got some problems, but we work them out, I still love him, but if he doesn't piss me off times. Like just recently, he became a pro athlete, he's a damn fighter like Goku, but he goes and becomes an athlete and the fame goes to his head, he's suddenly out with every other girl, but me, his actual girlfriend. She hollered, huffing could see why she was mad now, sounded like he didn't appreciate what he had. If it were him. Well, if it makes you feel any better, that's his loss. Personally I don't see why he would want more than you. He spoke, pulling her arm a bit tighter, and she finally noticed her arm was still looped with his, but his words and the action made her blush, and she smiled. Thanks Naruto, she spoke, letting there be silence, before she coughed. Anyway, we need to find a good place to eat at and get back. I'm sure Goku will be here tomorrow for that damn sparring match, and you'll want to be well rested for it. So any preferences? She asked. Well some, but I've been told I need some more variety in my diet, so you pick. He spoke, letting her have control, which she seemed to like honestly. She smiled and pulled her arm away, but grabbed his wrist. Come on, follow me then. She said as she ran with Naruto following behind her. They came upon a little barbecue place that reminded him vaguely of Yukino-Q from Konoha, even to the grills in the table, and they had a good diner where Bulma told him of her world and some of the things she's been through, including her time with Goku, the adventures and the crazy fights. Damn, and I thought some of my fights were whacked out. He said, and that got her attention. What kind of fights? She asked, innocently, honestly wondering what the 13-year-old had to compare to. Well, he started off with his Mizuki incident, where he demonstrated a clone for her to help convey the story, and followed that up with his fights with Zabuza, and she seemed impressed that he used more clever use of tactics, misdirection in how he fought with the shuriken and clone trick. Then the fight on the bridge. But when he told her of Haku she called bullshit and he agreed, like he did with Yami. But he digressed and she was impressed that something like those mirrors seemed possible, and as trying to figure out how it could work, he could tell by the look in her eyes. That was flowed with some of his other exploits, such as the mission to the Land of Tea, or guarding those nobles, and especially the Land of Snow mission. Though he left out mentions of the Kyuubi and not his fight with Sasuke. Those were deeply personal and still a bit painful. She seemed to be intrigued with how power could be passed down in their genetics, and that some of their abilities seemed to have more scientific roots than she knew her own experiences with Kai to be sometimes. Well, maybe not fights to the same scale, but pretty whacked out there. But at least you did them as missions and a good cause, and not just for fun or to challenge yourself. I swear, I love Goku to death, but he can get on your nerves sometimes with how much of a battle nut he is. She groaned out. But Naruto laughed. It's not that bad, just when you're raised as a warrior, it's what you know. Goku immediately recognized it in me, like I saw it in him. No big deal. However, I had to take a lot of missions because that was my only source of income. I wasn't really eager to challenge myself or for fun, well, not most of the time, but to support myself and prove I'm not what people thought I was. He said, and then realized his screw-up as Bulma looked at him concerned now. What did they think of you, Naruto? She asked, and Naruto bit his tongue, but sighed. That's he tried not to answer, as he looked up to her. Well, maybe some other time, okay? She spoke and he nodded, relieved. Thanks. He muttered lowly. No problem, Naruto. Now, let's get back home. I imagine Dad probably wants some help and I want to see what this spaceship is like. She said, getting up and Naruto followed her. Getting back to Capsule Corporation, Bulma had a FLL access ID made for him so he could come and go as needed and she smiled at him. That was a good night, Naruto. Thanks for playing along like that with Yamcha. I know it may have hurt him, but hopefully he'll learn from this. Good night. She spoke, waving as she walked off and left Naruto at his room. Night. He spoke as he got into the room and sighed. That really had been a nice fun night. But now he was left to his thoughts and decided he'd get some sleep and summon Fukasaku tomorrow when he was well rested. Now that he knew to summon him, he knew how much chakra he actually needed and at what concentration, so the drain should be less the next time. So he got undressed and got into bed, thinking of the night he spent with Bulma and the new world he was in. THT for now was going to be his home. Back in Konoha. Jiraiya was in Tsunade's office grumbling over what apparently Naruto had decided to do to him, and he got Fukasaku and Tsunade in on the deal. Sitting in the chair, arms crossed as he was sulking, still. Oh, come off it, you old goat. It could have been a lot worse considering it was a secret kept from him and you being his godfather, after all. Tsunade chided the older man, who sighed. Yeah, I know. So, is everything ready to be sent to him? He asked, looking over to her as he recovered from the string of misleading information, jokes and veiled threats, having already recovered from his near vasectomy Tsunade gave him earlier. Yes, all the letters have been written and collected, as well as supplies we've collected. We still don't know what his situation on that new planet is, so we're giving him a long-term hostile territory supply package. Lord Fukasaku said he had a few things he'd give to Naruto, and I included some extra things as well. You're the only one who hasn't written a letter or given anything yet. She spoke. I may have something better than a letter actually. He spoke, pulling out a storage scroll and unsealing it on the desk, revealing blank scrolls and standard arrangement of sealing tools. Brushes of various X's, ink stoned, inks, blood dish and other tools of the craft. He unrolled a black scroll, taking a small knife, he cut open the meat of his palm, draw blood into the dish, followed by a measure of ink, pushing chakra into the combined mixture. The blood absorbed the ink and became black, where he poured the new blood ink into the stone and took a brush, thoroughly charging the bristles with the yin and chakra before setting to work on the scroll. Tsunade leaned forward to watch Jiraiya work. Say whatever you will of the man, he was a damn fine seal master by any measure she used, and with her job as Hokage, before as Sannin and when she was in active service beforehand, she's seen her fair share of seal users. He was silent as he drew very fine, articulate patterns upon the scroll that at first seemed gibberish, but as she watched him lay down several formulas and patterns throughout the scroll, she could see how it flowed together from one symbol into the next, and eventually, how it all connected as he used connecting lines between formula to nodes to the center, an empty ring. Jiraiya finished, taking a seat as Tsunade healed his palm for him as he set his brush onto its rest, allowing the ink to dry on the new scroll before he did anything else. Once done, he charged the entire scroll with chakra, where the formula, patterns, nodes and connecting lines glowed, before settling. Well, that's done. he stated, taking a breath, sweating slightly from the constant pouring of chakra and concentration needed for the scroll. It looks like a storage seal, she said, however she knew that wasn't all, the pattern was too different, smaller to fit or formulas on the scroll, to be a simple storage seal. That's because it is, but of my own invention. Something I've been working on for Naruto. Normally you can only store things like kunai, food or the like into the storage seal. Nothing living. This one though, is the closest you can get to sealing a living being into the scroll. Or more specifically, a cage bunshin. He said, smiling as her eyes seemed to pop out of their sockets. It's untested though, so here goes nothing. He spoke, making a cage bunshin, and gave a mock salute before it sealed itself into the scroll, the ring now filled with the kanji for shadow. Mind taking it to another room, telling it something and dispersing the clone? He asked, and Tsunade nodded. A few minutes later, Jiraiya smiled, and then Tsunade came back into the room. So it works. And there's no discernible side effects from dispersing a clone that have been sealed, so the seal works as well. Now I just need to make a few more, so we can exchange scrolls instead of letters, faster and more comprehensive, plus we'll be able to actually see him and know he's okay. He spoke, still tired from the first time, due to the complexity of the seal. He felt something more on his hand and saw a filled mug of coffee held to his hand by Tsunade, which he took with a smile. He withdrew a soldier pill and crushed it between his fingers into the coffee. Gonna be a long night. He mused. Yeah, but one well worth it. Tomorrow you can sleep in all you like, just get this finished tonight we can send clones over to Naruto to ensure he's okay. She spoke, giving the man a small genuine smile, as the man got to work on his next scrolls. Disclaimer. Don't own DB or Naruto in any fashion. Though I do own this nice clear glass coffee mug that shows me I need a refill. Bulma was in awe of the technology of this space pod, it was so advanced and incredibly compact. She imagined that even if they only had pieces of it, it would still advance their level of technology, more than enough to get them flying across the stars themselves, but with a complete and intact ship, they could not only emulate it, but advance it. Of course that was because of the natural genius between the two brief scientists after all. By the time Bulma had gotten down to the lab, her dad already had every part down to its smallest piece, analyzed and catalogued its function. The computer of the machine was being decoded as they spoke, so by the morning they'd be able to translate its operating system and programming language to theirs. This thing is amazing, Dad, can you imagine what this will do for us? She asked her father, who was typing away at a computer while she was working on going over the total analysis of the pod. Of course I do. But it'll take time. Can't just imitate the design and slap a CC sticker on it, you know. We have to understand it, comprehend it, then reproduce it on our own, and then it'll be ours. He said, reminding his daughter they couldn't take shortcuts with adapting this piece of unknown technology. I know Dad, I know. She spoke, entering all the figures she had from the analysis and the suspected performance into a simulation and calculating its capabilities from there. Naruto is going to love the new pod we'll make for him. She said with a smile. Well actually I've been thinking about that. He said, his cat climbing up onto his shoulder as he leaned back in his chair. Bulma looked at him curiously, never thinking anything negative of his words, as he never gave her cause to think of such before. Why give him a new pod when we can build a live-in ship altogether? He's going to own whichever kind of ship we make for him, and he may well get the travel itch now that he's experienced it himself now, so I don't doubt the boy may just well start exploring the unknowns of space. So why give him a cramped pod he has to spend his time in under stasis when we can give him a ship he can live in and travel with at the same time? Even bury halfway into the ground for a dome home he can live in while planet side. Seems more useful to me and of better fit, doesn't it? He spoke, smiling as he had a whole slew of ideas to try out for such a project. Bulma looked at her father as he started to explain his idea and why, and honestly, he had thought it out and she could see it. Naruto did seem the curious and exploratory type, he's already a pioneer for the people of his world, accidental or not, and he may well continue to be. And with what she saw earlier in Naruto, he may not like his home that much if what she saw was any indication, so giving him a way to find his own path in life sounds perfect. Well, if we're going to do all that, we might as well overdo it. First though, like you said, we need to better understand the technology we're dealing with. So we'll have to take our time with it and ensure we don't screw it up. Last thing we want is for Naruto to plot a course to a new planet that sends him into a star. She said, more than motivated to do this right the first time. Oh, indeed, that would be a tragic fate. I'll have to be sure to include instruments to detect gravity wells from far off to accommodate course adjustment. He stated, his ideas for the interior put on hold in favor of everything a ship like this could possibly need. Next morning. Naruto blinked his eyes open as he stretched and yawned, rising up from the bed and looking around the room, realizing he was on Earth, not Element. Sighing, he rose and started a series of stretches to limber up his body, stretching in only his boxers to get the full span of motion. He was still getting used to his newly grown body, it was like yesterday he was 4'8" and today he was 5'4", literally to his perception from his stasis in the pod. If he could he'd have thanked the Kyuubi properly for it, but ever since that time, he hasn't been able to enter his mind sealscape to talk to Kyuubi or Yami either. Odd, but he supposed they had spent enough time with him during the trip in the pod to fill their need for him for a long time coming. Hey Naruto. Come on down for breakfast or you're gonna miss. The voice cut off as the door was open, and there stood Bulma looking at the damn near nude Naruto mid-stretch, showing all of his skin and how well built he was. Bulma had seen her male friends bare-chested and all plenty enough, but those was usually from fight, like saving the earth from Piccolo, so the situation usually overshadowed that fact. But since that wasn't happening, she could properly appreciate Naruto's form. She could honestly say she didn't believe he was 13 still, no way in hell. Well, you're definitely no slouch in the muscles, though you're not as built as Goku or the others like Yamcha. She stated, smirking as she leaned against the doorframe. Naruto calmed when he saw this wasn't going to be tense, awkward or embarrassing. Don't want to be stocky or heavy with muscle. Too much mass slows you down and burdens down the joints. A slimmer and refined musculature makes you faster, use what strength you have, then use speed to carry your strength forward. I'm a ninja first, fighter second. He spoke, finishing his stretches. Those words were Jiraiya's when he'd been working on Naruto's condition, asking why he didn't use free weights to build up muscle. In fact he was still unsure of what his body could really do right now. Well, it shows. It's like a heavier runner or swimmer's physique. Though if you're a ninja and you've been in a lot of battles, why don't you have scars? She asked, genuinely curious. I have a healing factor that's pretty insane. But I do have scars. He said and saw her confusion. A side effect of my healing factor is that I retain the scars and channeling my chakra through my skin shows them. In a way it's a reminder of all the damage I've accumulated and to know better about letting it get that bad. He stated and she nodded. Mind showing me? We ladies do like a good scar on a man, shows character. She teased, winking at him, and he shook his head while smirking. Where's the fun in it if I don't hold back on some things for a grand reveal later, gotta let the mystery increase the anticipation after all. He said, shooting it back to her now. Too true. Seems whichever girl taught you decided to teach you well. Keep this up and I may just leave Yamcha for you. She said with a teasing grin. Now, once you're done showing off the bod, breakfast is ready in the dining room. Might want to get in a hearty breakfast before Goku shows up, he's bound to work you over. She said, leaving Naruto to his own devices as he sighed and got up from the floor where he finished his stretches at before getting dressed in the guy he got yesterday. The guy was similar to Goku's, but this one was modified more to his tastes. The undershirt was a black mesh shirt that went down to his biceps, the shirt and pants were dark blue, with the sash in black. Both thighs were taped with white bandages, an extra large orange thigh holster on each thigh, and a length of material stretching up to loop and snap onto his sash, for extra secure fit. He had replaced his belt pouches with the holsters of his own design to hold the pouches' equipment for a more streamlined and ease of access. Internal seals of the holsters applied by him obviously. The rest of his equipment that could fit in the holsters or wasn't needed there was fit into pockets inside his shirt, which was a fold-over type. His boots were black with orange soles and lined trim boots because he found them a better fit for combat than exposed toe sandals. His necklace was under his shirt, long band started at his wrists and stopped midway up his forearm, black. Finally his forehead protector was fit onto his forehead, where it should be, and his hair was still allowed to flow back down to his shoulders in natural spikes that laid back. All in all, he felt he looked the part of a shinobi with what he had to work with. He had forgotten his weights today for the simple fact he didn't know his limits. After the sparring match, if Goku was a challenge, he'd know where he stood and what he'd need to adjust. He had thought to get armor, but really it would just weigh him down. Then there was the fact of possible shrapnel with it, and with his healing factor, it'd be a bitch feeling the wounds work out metal fragments or pulling them out himself. With his healing factor too, it made armor a moot point and the pain would hopefully enforce not to get hit in the first damn place. Walking out of his room, properly dressed and geared for missions or fighting, he made his way to the dining room to see quite a spread of food, with Bulma and the two briefs' parents there eating. Ah, Naruto. Looking quite ready for when Goku comes I see. Come and eat my boy, the cook has made quite a variety for us this morning. He said and Naruto nodded, taking a seat. Thank you. So I was wondering, what's your progress on the pod then? He asked, gathering up portions for himself before he said his thanks for the meal and started actually eating slow to enjoy the taste. This is good. My compliments to the chef. He spoke aloud with a hi from beyond a door. Well, it's not a pod any longer. It's in pieces. Bulma said, and Naruto choked, and Bulma couldn't help but laugh. Oh, calm down. We had to break it down to pieces to understand what we're working with. But once we do, we can build a new one, a better one even, that you can actually control and get back home with faster. So taking the time to understand it can only be a good thing. Relax, we'll get you home. She said and smiled as she saw Naruto relax. That's good. Though I'm curious how much will I be able to control it? He asked and Bulma grinned. Enough that you can go world hopping with it after you get home. You know, explore the galaxy. She said aloofly. Galaxy? He asked and she looked at him a moment, scrutinizing him before she realized it. Oh. Right, your people aren't that advanced yet to think going past your planet or studying space, are they? She asked and he shook his head, then shrugged. To be honest, I'm not sure. I was raised in an orphanage and then brought into the academy with the other orphans to be inducted into the military. The academy focused on some academics, but it was those that related to the job more than like that of a scholar. He stated and thought for a moment. But I do admit, the idea of exploring other planets does sound awesome. And I guess I would need to know more about those type of things if I'm going to. Got anything I can use to learn about that stuff from? He asked and Bulma beamed. Sure do. We'll go over that later though, there's a lot to learn on that so it'll take time. She said and he chuckled a bit at that. Why are you laughing at me? She asked dangerously on Naruto, who shut up and smiled sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. I wasn't. Swear. I was laughing at the fact that some things are supposed to take a long time to learn. You see, that's not true for me. He said, forming his favorite hand seal, and a clone of Naruto appeared. Remember my shadow clone I made for you last night when I was talking about some of the fights I've had? He asked and she nodded. Well, anything my clones learned, their experiences and knowledge, is transferred back to me once they dispel. So I can set multiple clones to reading multiple books, so in the time it takes to read one book, I can read 10 or however many I want to read, I just have to make enough clones to read that many books. And once a clone dispels, not only is its information transferred to me, but any other clones that might still be around too. That's not fair. Bulma screamed immediately, bypassing shocked altogether for rage at how unfair a technique that was, before putting her head to the table and crying at all the effort she put into her learning, just for Naruto to show up with a wonder method for learning. Why, that's a remarkable technique. You could effectively read an entire library in days with that. Spoke Dr. Briefs, WH didn't seem as fazed by it, hell, practically not at all compared to Bulma. Actually it's not as good as you think. He said and she eyed him dangerously, he felt sweat forming on his face already under her glare. Well, you see for normal people it's dangerous. It divides your chakra evenly amongst you and the clones, so if you make too many you could kill yourself. And if you make too many and all of them experience too much, then the feedback can knock you out if they all dispel at once. I'm only able to make so much because my reserves are absurd. This jutsu is practically built for me, but T is invented for scouting, so you don't have to go into hostile territory yourself, just send in a clone, it dispels, and you know what you're dealing with. He explained, and Bulma seemed to calm down. Okay, I get it now. Basically you came across the technique and you found the uses for it outside of its intended function and then spam the hell out it. She said, still grumbling over such a useful trick. Pretty much, but I didn't know about the memory gain feature till recently. Before then I was using the clones as extra bodies for number tactics in fighting, like I told you before. He stated and she finally relented. Well, alright. I can see that. So you'll be able to pick up what I got to teach you quickly, that right? She asked and he nodded. Good, since you can learn, I plan on teaching you. There's enough muscle-brained fighters on this world as is. We need a few smarter ones, and until you leave, you're mine. She said, and Naruto suddenly felt very small and trapped, like a lab rat. Actually that's how he guessed a lab rat would feel under Bulma's gaze. Ugh, sure. Yeah. He said, smiling nervously as he felt the sweat start to race down his face. He decided to finish his breakfast at that point, disregarding the chuckling from Dr. Briefs and his wife. Oh. You know what, if you can make more than one of yourself, whatever woman you find yourself with will be very happy. Said wife spoke and Naruto choked, well Bulma laughed, though the idea wasn't lost on the Bluenet. Maybe she should mention that to Yamcha in regard to that multi-form technique she saw them use before in those fights. Naruto just chose to stay silent and finish before anything else happened, completely ignoring the red dusting his cheeks as the ideas forced themselves into his head, as well as the memory at the hot springs. Nope, totally not thinking about all that. Sighing as he finished, he set his dishes down and sighed. That was good food. Thank you again for the meal. He spoke and the married couple nodded. I think I'm going to go out to the yard to get a warm-up in and help digest the food so I'm not bogged down in the spar. He spoke, rising up. Good idea, if I know Goku, he'll intend to get his money's worth out of the spar. Dad and I will be in the lab if you need us. She said and he nodded as they all split up. Outside, Naruto took a while to do a few breathing exercises while he meditated and cleared his mind before he put himself through the paces of a workout he did before he sparred with Uraya, though increased the reps until he started to feel the strain. He was taken aback by how much more it took than before and smiled. Kyuubi, thank you so much. This feels great. He spoke aloud, getting back to his workout. He finished up with a few chakra control exercises, using various clones for the task, each using a different one and a combination therein, while he did cool downs and practiced his taijutsu afterwards to get a feel for how the new length and weight of his body felt into the form. It wasn't too terribly long after that he heard a voice and smirked. Bulma was right. Hey Naruto. Sorry for the wait, but I had to explain to Chichi what I was doing. But I'm here now, so ready to get started. The man asked and Naruto just laughed. Bulma was right, utterly, all he thought about was fighting. Not like he was too different from him before, just now there's some extra things he likes now too. Yeah, but let's find a good open spot. He said and Goku nodded, leading the way, taking to the air, and Naruto did the same in eagle form again, the golden plumage of the giant golden eagle shimmering in the light as he flew with Goku. It was a short flight as they got a bit past city limits, so they didn't disturb anyone. Alright, this is good enough. Goku said, turning to Naruto who landed and transformed back. Yeah, though this is just a spar, right? I don't know how my jutsu would work against yours, so fighting only and no flying, right? He asked and Goku nodded. Sweet. Well, whenever you're ready. He said, taking a stance. Goku did the same, keeping a smile on his face as his eyes held a serious analytical gleam to them that Naruto recognized from Shikamaru. Wah. But it was cut off as Goku took the first move, getting Ito Naruto's guard and throwing a punch. Fast. He thought, raising an arm to intercept, and he felt the force of the punch through it, be held strong, and pushed the arm forward and to the side to attempt to open up Goku's guard, but a step back away from Naruto's range to evade Naruto's counter punch, before stepping back in with a kick to the side Naruto had launched his punch from, to take advantage of his open guard there. Taking the hit. Naruto grunted as he took the kick but rooted his feet to not be toppled by its force, before jumping back and taking a strained breath. Damn. That was a hard hit. He commented, looking back to Goku who smiled. You're not so bad yourself, you took the hit pretty well. I used that kick for felling trees for firewood. He said and Naruto grimaced. Sure feels like it. He said, remembering a few times he'd gone through trees, snapping them over with his body. Praise be his healing factor. He reinforced his stance and filled his body with chakra, feeling the increase in power as he looked at Goku before launching forward, using his own speed and aiming a punch for Goku's jaw which is blocked but stepping in closer, right into the guard to snap an elbow with the other arm into Goku's gut, followed up by a jaw punch and throw into the ground, taking hold on an arm to do it. But before he could retreat out of range, Goku used his ground position to sweep his legs and take him down, followed by a heel drop down at Naruto's chest that he rolled out of the way from, flipping backward onto HS feet and retaking his stance. Good combo. Though you leave your lower body unguarded like that for anyone who knows how to fight on the ground. Goku commented and Naruto smiled. Didn't know that. Guess there's only so much you can learn from self-practice, huh? He spoke and Goku nodded. They stared at one another's stance just a moment before Naruto decided to take the offensive again, taking the low ground with a low kick to Goku's knee that he twisted away to take the kick to the calf instead, while he brought a back fist to Naruto's face that spun him round. Naruto used it and accelerated the spin, jumping into it with a kick that caught across Goku's face, and Naruto landed back on his feet and attempted a knee into Goku's chest while he recovered from the face kick. But Goku caught the offending leg and used it for a grapple, spinning Naruto round and round and round before tossing him, watching as he skipped and jumped across the ground before recovering and getting back on his feet, but Goku was already on him again with another loaded punch bearing down on him. Naruto blocked Goku's right punch with the outside of his right arm and sidestepped to his left, parrying his punch to the side effecting and bringing his knee into Goku's gut successfully this time, with a follow-up elbow aimed at Goku's jaw. Though the elbow was caught and Goku jumped back. The two were still smiling at one another as they started to exchange more and more blows, staying in one another's guard longer as they adjusted to each other's style, trading strikes and blocks like debaters trade words. This lasted for a good hour before they separated again, both breathing heavily, never having lost their smiles. There was a recognition in their eyes as they eased out of stance and took calming deep breaths. Man, it feels good to get a good spar in. Ever since me and Chichi got married, I haven't had the time for it. He spoke, stretching a bit to work out the soreness from the hits he took. I can only imagine. Me on the other hand, I went through a harsh growth spurt, so I've been feeling weird and gangly, the spar was what I need to get a feel for everything again. He voiced, stretching himself. Yeah, I noticed that. You were pretty clumsy and kind of all over the place at the start. But as we kept going your form got better and you started using more speed and strength. Guess you were getting used to the new range and ability you had to work with?" he asked and Naruto nodded. "Pretty much. I used to be 8 inches shorter the last time I was training. Don't know how, but I'm glad I was asleep in that pod on the way here. I can't even imagine what the growing pains would have been like." "Ouch, that is harsh. I remember when I was training at the sanctuary when I started growing taller, Mr. Popo had to correct my form all the time while I was growing," he mentioned, remembering the trouble his own growth spurts gave him in training. "Yeah, problem is though I'm still 13 and my sensei says I'm gonna keep growing like a weed till I stop," he said, grimacing. "Ouch. That's gonna suck. Glad I'm not there anymore," he said before he caught up. "Wait, you're only 13?" he asked and Naruto nodded. "That's amazing. You're already this strong at your age. I wasn't near as strong back then," he said, remembering back. Naruto smiled sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck, not used to the praise. "Well, truthfully I used to be complete garbage. It wasn't until my apprenticeship that he corrected all of my skills, before that no one would really train me, so I had to learn by myself and it caused me a lot of problems," he said and Goku nodded. "I can imagine, a good master can make a good student." "Yeah, I think you're right. Though I DN''T want to learn all of my master's skills. Some are just embarrassing. He's a huge pervert and all he wants to do is look at girls all day and makes techniques to do just that while not getting caught," he complained and Goku laughed. "That sounds just like Master Roshi. He taught me and some others how to fight," he informed and Naruto sighed. "Great, this planet has a GA of its own," he groaned. But sighed. Then a stray thought took him out and he looked at Goku. "Hey, think we can test to see what our energy attacks do to each other? I want to see something," he asked and Goku nodded, forming a Kai sphere and Naruto formed a Rasengan. However there was an immediate problem. You gonna come closer?" "No, I was gonna throw mine, weren't you?" he asked and Naruto shook his head. "I wasn't intending to, I've only ever been taught to use it up close. Though it fires off once it does hit a person, with the person flying off with it," he said, going over to a tree and smashing the Rasengan into it where it ground through the tree, leaving a gaping hole where it had ground through. Goku thought a moment before he threw his at a rock that exploded and Naruto paled. "So glad we didn't follow through with Tat now," he muttered. Your energy seems to be different than mine and has some restrictions to how you can use it compared to mine, but appears to be more flexible in how it's projected," he spoke, analyzing what he saw of the few examples of it so far. "And yours is a great deal more destructive and has a broader range of applications in the fewer ways you can project it," he stated, making his own counter-analysis. "Well, I was supposed to be on a training trip anyway when all this happened and I came here. Maybe I can train here until I get home. Possibly teach other how to fight like the other does," he offered and Goku beamed at the idea of having a training partner and new methods to learn to fight with. "Sounds like a great idea. This is gonna be awesome," Goku shouted, excited obviously. However he stopped and drew his eyebrows together in concentration, looking upwards to the sky. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and looked up but saw nothing. He shifted from foot to foot nervously as he waited in silence. He was about to ask what he was doing when Goku looked back to Naruto. "Sorry about that. Think you can fly with me for a bit? There's someone who wants to see you," he asked and Naruto was nervous now. Where had this come from? Sure. But who?" he asked. "Kami. The guardian of Earth. He oversees and protects Earth." He spoke naturally as if there was nothing wrong. Okay, Kami is I the Kami or?" he asked, leaving that in the air. "Nah, his actual name is Kami. I trained at his sanctuary years ago at the top of the world. He wants to meet you and ask you some questions. Don't worry, he's nice," he said and Naruto nodded. He formed a shadow clone. "Go back and tell Bulma where I'm going so she knows and doesn't think I just up and vanished on her," he said and the clone nodded, taking the eagle form itself before the original did the same and they both took off for their respective destinations. Naruto followed Goku, about 20 minutes in, getting the memories of his clone and nodding to himself silently. Bulma knew now, so no worries. They flew for a few more hours, Boruto using the great wingspan he had to glide effortlessly, enjoying the flight every minute he had, looking down at the ground with his enhanced eyesight as an eagle and appreciating the view he had. Eventually Naruto could see a tower in the distance, but at that time Goku started to rise and Naruto followed, however once he got past the tower he started having problems and was having to flap his wings harder and harder before he cried out to get Goku's attention before he stalled and started to fall. He dispelled the shape shift and Goku caught him by the arms like the first time they flew together. "Thanks." "No problem. Sorry I completely forgot about that," He apologized and Naruto just nodded numbly. Flying was awesome, stalling was not, before they got up to a half-sphere platform that Goku set him down on. Naruto looked around and marveled. So this was the sanctuary. The first thing he noticed was that it was serene, peaceful. Looking over the side, he could actually see the curve of the earth itself. Whoa, he mumbled out, taking a breath, to realize then the shortness he had of it, and guessed the air was as thin as it could get before you passed out from going higher. He got his breathing under control before he followed Goku towards the main structure. In front of the white building stood two figures, one of black skin and wearing white pants, rad curved toe shoes, a vest and a head wrapping. The other was green and wrinkled all hell, in age he recognized, and wore a robe that reminded him of the Hokage robes. He held a walking staff in one hand, and he could tell he was analyzing him. "Hey Kami, I brought him like you asked for, though we had a little bit of a trip up on the way up here," he said, a sheepish closed-eye smile as he rubbed the back of his head. The green one smiled slightly at Goku's antics. "I figured. Though you got him up here safe and sound, so that's all that matters." The man spoke, his voice weighed down with age that brought experience and wisdom, which honestly reminded him of the old man with a passion. He was feeling incredibly homesick and somber now. Grabbing his other arm, he shifted uncomfortably, trying to repress it for now, so he could deal with this. "There is no need for that, Naruto. Remember your fallen loved ones is a good thing, so long as you don't let it drag you down." Kami spoke, and immediately Naruto jumped back, assuming a stance, panicked. "Did you just?" He shot off, but he was cut off when he spoke again. "Read your mind. Only the surface thoughts. You are a very expressive young man, and it's a part of what drives you, your strong emotions. Don't ever lose them, though for one such as myself, it gives me insight to your mind without need to touch you to do it, so you may wish to work on guarding your mind in the future, lest someone use that against you." He spoke, giving the blonde shinobi some advice, and Naruto just nodded wearily, though he still hadn't dropped his stance. "Please, calm down and come back, I have much to discuss with you, or rather see of you, would be the optimal word," he stated, and Naruto was confused before he stepped forward, still a bit guarded. "Before I start, I would like to ask permission to read your mind, your deeper thoughts and memories, so I may learn of your world and learn of you." "Why do you want to know that?" he asked immediately, dropping any pretense of formality, since he was still put off by what he did before, and now he was wanting to read his mind directly now. "Truthfully. To evaluate if you are a threat to our world, directly or indirectly, and to see if you will take what you learn and see how you will use it when you return to your homeworld. I'm the guardian of this world and it's my duty to protect it, and that includes what comes from this world that may affect others. I hope you understand, Naruto. I don't wish to be offensive or such in any way, but this is the charge I must uphold when I chose to become the guardian of Earth." The green-skinned decreed, and Naruto now understood. He thought it over a moment, he really wasn't all that keen to let someone else rattle around inside his head. On the other hand, though, this person was just following through with his job to protect those he guarded, and he didn't think he'd have the job if he wasn't capable. Then there was the fact that this wasn't his world and he was essentially a trespasser, and if he made trouble, it could mean a lot of problems for him and those he was staying with, and he didn't want to bring any trouble on Bulma's head. Thinking on it a moment longer, he nodded with a sigh. "I understand, it's like being our village's Hokage, alright. So what do I have to do?" he asked, and Kami strode forward. "Just stay still. You won't feel a thing." He spoke, and once Kami put his hand to his forehead, he released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Kami delved into Naruto's mind, and instead of putting up with the trouble of the mindscape, which surprised Kami that Naruto had developed it to the point he had, bypassed it, going directly to the raw source. He started from the very beginning and viewed the entirety of Naruto's life from beginning, right up to the very moment he stood before him, including the time he spent in his own mind. He didn't stop despite his shock and concern, but once he finished, he pulled back and entered the mindscape, landing in the hallway just as Naruto does when he goes there. Walking down the halls, he saw the water on the floor and frowned, as he did the other traits of the mindscape. Closed-in, bricked, pipes going in and out of the walls, traveling a distance here and there, the corridors were dank and only partially illuminated, and the atmosphere itself was, to crudely say it, depressing. For one so young to have such a bleak representation of their mind, he knew why. He had just seen the boy's entire life, so he was amazed it wasn't worse than this. Turning a corner, he could see a large chamber at the end of this corridor and sighed as he walked on and came before the massive gates, barred by a tag that he knew forbade the being behind it from getting out. Claws crashed against the bars, but Kami held fast, knowing the tactics of this creature from the memories of the boy. But on a side wall, a shadow Naruto stood leaning against the wall, arms crossed and glaring at Kami through narrowed eyes, clearly not happy with him. Yami as he called himself, but he knew all too well what this was. This was Naruto's Piccolo. But why had it helped Naruto like it had during the trip? Ayubi and Yami, I presume? he asked, and the fox roared in anger at the green-skinned guardian, while Yami sneered. You should damn well know who we are, you bypassed us and went straight to the memories. Like a right bastard you are. He spat out at the old guardian. You should know why. Oh, I do, and while Naruto may understand and allow it to happen, I don't take kindly to people just running around inside our head however they may very well please. Our head? Kami asked with an amused grin, now starting to get a better picture of this Yami now. Yami's eye twitched and he looked to the side. I see. Not quite a piccolo then. He whispered to himself before looking to the being before him. So, this is the method they use for dealing with beings beyond their power like you. Barbaric, but I see it was their only method. I could rip you from the boy, thought that would kill him, or seal the boy and by extension you, away to never be seen again. But that won't solve any problems now, will it? Especially since your other half is still on your planet and the boy doesn't deserve such a fate, nor does deserve what was thrust upon him in the first place, and all that followed. He said, glancing at Yami, who nodded when he connected eyes with him. Then what will you do? Yami spoke, still glaring at the old man, knowing he had no real power over the guardian. You'll see. He stated before he vanished. Fucking cryptic decrepit old fucks. He said, bashing the wall with the side of his fist before he walked away, out of the Kyuubi's chamber. Back with Naruto, Kami opened his eyes and pulled his hand back, while Naruto opened his eyes and looked to the guardian and looked around, honestly expecting something to happen, but nothing. You've lived a very hard life, Naruto, harder than I've seen any live on this planet in some centuries. He said, and Naruto winced, knowing he saw everything with just those words. So you know about he started, and Kami just nodded. Naruto sighed, hanging his head, rubbing the back of his head, his shoulders slumping. Jess, that's a no to the training, then huh? He asked and didn't meet the guardian's eyes. Well now, when did I say that? He asked, his tone filled with mirth, and Naruto shot his head up, staring at the man, before he smiled and instantly jumped into the air, whooping in excitement, and Goku just smiled, happy he got the chance to train. However. He started, getting Naruto's attention. I'll have to ask that what you learn here will not be taught to those of your planet. Your people are far too destructive to use such power wisely or without seeking to use it to rule over others. He said, and Naruto stared at him a moment. But what about me, shouldn't that extend to me too? He asked, and Kami smiled. The fact you're asking should be answer enough, Naruto. He stated, and Naruto went to speak again, before he stopped and thought about it, before kinda getting it and nodding. Good, but I want this as a promise, Naruto, for I know your word is your life. He stated, and Naruto looked to the side a moment, sighing as he remembered the promises he had already. But he thought a moment and something occurred to him. And what if it means the difference in saving a life or letting it die? He asked, and Kami nodded. That is why I'll be insisting you learn a number of healing disciplines so that you can save lives with your power. Now do I have your promise? He asked. Naruto took the moment to take that in and nodded before he straightened, took a breath and met Kami's eyes. I promise to not teach those of my world what I learn here, to learn the healing disciplines offered to me, so I may save lives with my own power. He spoke resolutely, his eyes conveying the conviction he said into those words. Kami gave Naruto a small smile, knowing he meant those words in total compliance with each letter that formed the promise. Good. Now, form a clone and send it off to tell your hosts that you'll be training with me for a little while, not too long. I intend to send you through the same training path Goku here took, but we have some preparations to take before you can, such as giving your chakra an upgrade, so to speak, so you can learn our techniques. He stated, and Naruto's jaw dropped. You serious? He gaped, not really sure he heard right. 100%. Yes. He shouted, whooping to the heavens. He landed and made a clone, who nodding before taking off at a fast run, before he jumped off the edge and transformed into the gold eagle again, using the massive drop to gain speed in a dive, before cutting into a strong glide with its full wingspan. Goku, I'll be depriving you of your training partner for a while so he can train properly, but once I'm done with him, I'll call you to take him to the Turtle Hermit for further training, understand? He asked, and Goku nodded. Thank you for understanding, though you may want to return home, it's a hard flight back home from here. You may wish to get a senzu from Korin before you take off. He stated, and Goku panicked, nodding his head before he took off too. Now left alone at the top of the world with the guardian and his assistant, he looked around as Kami reached out and touched Mr. Popo's head, allowing him to know what he did of Naruto and his plans, who nodded in understanding. Now. Let's begin. What if Naruto merged with Dragon Balls in Dragon Ball, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.